Good evening and welcome to this regular session of the Board of Education. This meeting is officially called to order. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members in attendance tonight are Director Kelleher, Director Shinley, Director Lind, Chair Baker, Director Carly Anderson, Director David Anderson, and Director Thompson. The board is joined by Superintendent Dr. Doug Van Zyl, members of the Executive Cabinet, Brenda Albrecht, Dr. Emily McDonald, Bill Holmgren, Dave Haveman, and Stephanie Cass. Now on to good news.
All right, thank you and good evening. And it seems like a continuation from last night. It's like we haven't left, so welcome back, I guess. So good news, we have Student of the Month. So March was the second month of our Student of the Month recognition program. Students are nominated by staff who share with us just how amazing, smart, kind, helpful, and wonderful that our students are. March recipients are Ellie Anderson, a kindergartner at Cherryview Elementary, Glory Alija, a 7th grader at Kenwood Trail Middle School, and Josh Nangwa, a 9th grader at Lakeville South High School. Also, congratulations to our Blazing Cats because they won first place at State Hockey Championship. So congratulations to them for winning the first Minnesota State Floor Hockey Championship. The Blazing Cats defeated New Prague, TCU, LSH, Bella Plain, Jordan. Wow, that's a lot of folks on that one. So they beat a lot of people. They beat that team by a score of 15-6. So they did trounce them pretty well on Saturday, March 18th. This was a rematch from the 2022 state championship game, and the Blazing Cats include students from Lakeville, Burnsville, and Farmington. The Athena Award recipients, congratulations to Emily Mose of Lakeville South High School and Ava Blazic of Lakeville North High School for being named recipients this year's St. Paul Area Athena Awards. The program recognizes the school's most outstanding female senior student athlete for their athletic accomplishments. Emily is a two-sport athlete in Cougar volleyball and lacrosse. Ava is a prominent member of the Panther volleyball team. We also have a Gatorade Minnesota Boys Basketball Player of the Year. So on March 15th, for the first time, Gatorade selected a student from Lakeville North High School to be named the Gatorade Minnesota Boys Basketball Player of the Year. 12th grade student Nolan Winter, who plays for LNSH Boys Basketball Team, was chosen for this prestigious award. The award recognizes athletic excellence, high standards of academic achievement, and exemplary character demonstrated on and off the court. Lakeville North and South DECA teams excelled at state. Congratulations to our Lakeville North and South DECA teams on their accomplishments at the Minnesota DECA State Career Development Conference, which was held March 5th through 7th. Several students from both teams competed in the finals, with 20 students earning top rankings and qualifying for the International Career Development Conference, which will take place in Orlando, Florida in April. The Kenwood Trail Science Olympiad team placed 5th at state, so congratulations to them, their Olympic Science Olympiad team, for finishing 5th at the Minnesota State Olympic Tournament on Saturday, March 4th. Lakeville North Boys Basketball Team, congratulations to the Lakeville North Basketball Team on taking 3rd place last weekend at the 2023 State Class 4A Boys Basketball Tournament. The team defeated Eastview with the score of 83-70. The team defeated Eastview with a score of 83-70. Congratulations on a strong season. The 2023 Inclusion Awards. Congratulations to this year's Inclusion Award recipients, and Special Education Advisory Council and the Family Connections PTO host the Inclusion Awards every year to recognize the individuals in Lakeville area schools who demonstrate extraordinary acts of kindness and inclusion. This year's recipients include teacher Sarah Bring, Angela Fastine, John Gilmer, Elizabeth Heiderscheit, Tricia Kennedy, and Lisa Meyer. Student nutrition worker Philip Swayzen, Schmitty Sons bus driver and bus aide Keith Neeson and Mark Van Dyne, students Ben Anderson and Mark Zern, and parent Amber Alaskan. If I said that wrong, any of those, I apologize. Allison, there we go. Yeah, there we go. I would get it close and somebody would always correct me, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Teacher of the Year semifinalist, congratulations Sherry Peterson, who has moved on as a semifinalist for the 2023 Minnesota Teacher of the Year. She's an intermediate school district 917 special education teacher who works with students at Christina Huddleston. She is one of the 33 semifinalists from across the state of Minnesota. The Teacher of the Year will be named in May. So congratulations and great job to all of our folks, and that was some great news for the hard work that our students and our staff and families do in our district. So congratulations to them all.
Thanks for sharing that. That was a lot of good news. So, woo, 2 pages full. We like that. For board communications tonight, we just want to make it the public aware that a lot of the emails that we've been receiving have been going into our spam folders. We are trying to keep an eye on that and make sure that those emails do get answered, but just so the public is aware. We did have a community engagement session tonight, and we had 3 board members in attendance. It was Director Kelleher, Director Carly Anderson, and Director Thompson. Do any of you have anything to share about any of the community engagement that happened during that time? I know we had some students in here that were sharing about French.
Yeah, we had somebody wanting to talk about the media specialists, the DSL roles. We had someone speak about the French program. We had somebody speak about the ALC proposal. And we had, oh my goodness, I'm trying to think what the topic. What was the 4th one? And I know who it was. I can't.
360.
Oh, 360. Thank you. Thank you. And about the 360 positions, Community 360.
Thank you for sharing about that. Do we have any agenda additions tonight? Director Thompson?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to add an agenda topic to discuss the establishment of a Board of Education Finance Committee.
So we have a motion by Director Thompson to add to the agenda discussion of a Board of Education Finance Committee. Do we have a second?
I second.
So I have a second by Director Schindley. I can open it up for some discussion by the board. Okay, we'll put that item to a vote. All in favor of adding this item to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
The no vote was Director Lind. All right, so we'll add that to the agenda and talk about that later. Can we approve the agenda? We have a motion for approval of the agenda with the added item. Director Thompson?
I'd like to make a motion to add another agenda topic.
Sure, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to discuss the establishment, to discuss the reinstatement of public comment.
Okay. All right, we have a motion by Director Thompson to add another item to the agenda, which would be the reinstatement of public comment. Do we have a second for that motion?
I second.
All right, we have a second by Director Schindley. Is there any further discussion on this?
I'd like to make one comment.
Director Lind?
I think these items that we're putting on, were not on our agenda for tonight, and for the sake of transparency, I think there's people that would, if they were known that you were added to our agenda, would attend the meeting, or at least watch it so they have an interest in it. So I'm not sure we're being that transparent by doing this.
Director Kelleher?
I agree. There's no urgency for this discussion. I agreed and supported the Board Finance Committee because there's an urgency to having to have that discussion and decision made because of what we're dealing with right now. But I do not believe it's a good practice, and I know the superintendent shared his position on that as well, that it is not a good practice to be adding things to agendas that have been publicly posted and changing those agenda items on our community members without them being aware of it. So I would recommend that we don't add things just because, and these are, in my opinion, good discussions for work session meetings prior to coming to the board to act on.
Director Carly Anderson?
I really like this topic and think we need to come back to it, but do agree that I think we have some pretty urgent issues on our agenda that deserve our full attention, and I would like to just table that part for later where we can talk about it in a work group and then maybe bring it back where the community can have some input.
Director David Anderson,
I agree with Carly's comments.
Director Thompson,
I'm in favor of this, and I presented it because there seems to be lots of stakeholder information that is being shared via email regarding the budgets that we've been going through. And so there isn't any other forum outside of the stakeholder sessions, which are not recorded, that our community members have an avenue to share their point of view, they share their insights, their data, whatever it may be. While it may be not the appropriate process, but I think in the budget discussions that we're having today, giving stakeholders more opportunity to share their point of view in a recorded forum seems very transparent to do.
any further discussion by the board? Dr. Van Zyl?
Since my superintendent position was brought to, I would tell you, was mentioned, was that best practice would not be to add items to your agenda after they're already posted. I think the conversation last night in regard to the finance committee at least gave people a heads up that maybe that was going to take place. I think otherwise it is kind of sprung on people, and so they don't necessarily have the ability to know that you're discussing or taking action on an item depending on where you place it. So I do think that limits your, one of the things I think that maybe you're trying to do with public comment by doing it this way maybe limits that aspect for this particular item that you brought up. So it's just best practice not to do that if you can avoid it.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and put it to a vote on adding public comment to our agenda tonight. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
No.
I abstain.
Okay. So Kim, we had Director David Anderson abstain. We had one yes on that would be Director Thompson, and then the rest would have been nays. You're welcome. All right, so the only item added to the agenda would have been the Board of Education Finance Committee. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with that additional item?
So moved.
So I have a motion by Director Thompson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Director David Anderson. Any further discussion on the agenda?
Clarification on something that we added. You called it a committee, and I think you want a task force.
No, I don't think so. He wants a board committee.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. As if there's no other discussion, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move on to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion by Director Carly Anderson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Director Lind. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Okay, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we'll move on to reports. It looks like we have Aaron Casper and Brenda Albrecht to talk about the medical and dental rate renewal.
So they're going to come forward and share that information with you. I'll let Brenda introduce Aaron, and then we'll go from there. Brenda.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
No.
No, not that.
Is the mic on?
He's coming to check. I think he noticed. Is the mic on? Did you know? No?
No.
No.
I'll just talk really loud.
Well, give him a second.
Okay.
Now try it.
Okay.
Is that better?
There we
Okay,
go.
There we go.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Van Zyl, and members of the school board. You have before you this evening a recommendation for approval of our medical and dental renewal rates. I have with me this evening Aaron Casper from NIS, and he will be presenting on the performance of our plan and give some updates on our renewal.
Thank you, Brenda. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Van Zyl. Pleasure to be here this evening with you. So as you saw in your board packet, what I want to do, just knowing that we've got 4 new board members here this evening, or relatively new, just wanted to give a quick overview of the insurance plan, and specifically on the medical insurance. So there's really 3 different types of plans that are available in the marketplace today. They're fully insured, where essentially that carrier is taking on the risk and we're paying a premium for them to take on that risk. Our pooled self-insured option, where it's either you're a member of a self-insured pool and it's a level premium, and the pool itself is taking on the risk and you're paying in that level premium. You don't really have the control that you have in the the third option, which is our self-insured plan. So we're on a standalone self-insured basis here at Lakeville. We have been for 3 years. And essentially, right now, as you kind of take a look at the history, we were fully insured up until the 2019-2020 plan year. At that point in time, we transitioned to self-insurance. So essentially, the district is taking on the risk and paying for the same protections that we were paying for when we were in the fully insured market for individual specific stop loss, which is specific claims, and then also on the aggregate level. So really kind of a blanket of protection over the district. So we transitioned back in 2019-20 to self-insurance. In terms of plan for performance, as of our most recent renewal, the most recent 12-month period, we have an increase of 1% over that 12-month period of time, which is actually very good. We're right on our numbers, right where we anticipated to be landing. So in real dollar terms, we were running 26 million compared to 25.5 million the previous 12-month period of time. So an increase of $500,000 over that 12-month period. We're currently set up for a stop loss protection of $200,000 specific level. So anything up to $200,000, our plan incurs. Anything over $200,000, our specific stop loss insurance kicks in and provides that coverage. Just a little bit of a detail on kind of how insurance works here in terms of our plan. We've got 94 members that have over $50,000 in claims, and that's not too bad considering we have 1,300 total members in our plan. So those individuals represent 40% of our overall costs. Essentially, the good risk is paying for the bad risk over that period of time. Our pharmacy costs are currently running as expected, and last year when we performed our health insurance transparency required statutory bid, we did make the move to actually accept pharmacy rebates. So it's kind of a goofy way to look at it, but the higher our spend is on more expensive pharmaceuticals, the higher the rebate that we receive. So we'd anticipate in this 12-month period that we're coming off of for our renewal for a 7-1 that we're going to probably pull in around $800,000 from our specific stop or from our pharmacy claim rebate. So that would be from Prime Therapeutics with Blue Cross Blue Shield. On our third page here, the plan performance, specifically the district successfully deployed a cost mitigation strategy not only for our individual participants, employees, but also the district itself. A teledoc program called Health ESU. We were essentially able to bring a zero-cost option for individuals to be able to access general medicine, mental health, dietary and nutritional access, secondary opinions for medical treatment, as well as neck and back pain. So zero cost to the individual employee. We were able to negotiate based on our bid last year that Blue Cross Blue Shield would incur that cost. That was around $165,000. This year, after additional negotiations with Blue Cross Blue Shield, I'm happy to report, I know Dr. Van Zel will be happy to hear this, that we were able to get Blue Cross Blue Shield to agree to also pay for that again for this upcoming renewal. So that's around $170,000.
I told you to twist their arm.
I know you did. I know you did. And we went and twisted. So we heard you. So the good thing is that our employees have really responded well to this program. Teledoc has reported to us that they have not seen the types of utilization that we've had here at Lakeville Schools. So we're already at a positive return on investment after 8 months, and we still haven't finished off this plan year. So this is really a valuable program, and this is 100% claims mitigation or removal from our plan when individuals go seek this virtual care option. So we're really happy with it, and they're actually talking white paper on this, on what we've done. And really what I would attribute that to is the engagement by the employee bargaining units on our district-wide insurance committee. They've been extremely engaged. They ask fantastic questions, and they have collaborated on trying to keep our costs down relative to our plans. So kudos to them. Let's see here. Additionally, as we're two additional things here as I close out. We are moving to offer a new plan option here this coming open enrollment period leading into our 7/1 renewal date, a $4,000 high deductible health plan. This is very different than the two existing plans that we offer today, one being a $20 copay plan and one being a $500 deductible plan. So this really is our transition into consumer-driven health for our district. And we're hearing from our existing staff and also as we're acquiring employees coming in that are asking for this. So again, this is in collaboration with our district insurance committee. So we anticipate kicking this off for open enrollment here coming up this spring. And then finally, again, to our plan, we're adding a kind of a step up or a top on to our existing network, Solarte Health Amplified Network, which is essentially going to allow employees to have $0 coverage on a handful of basic services and treatments. Nothing they need to do on their part. We're going to be instituting that plan effective 7/1, so we're going to be rolling out with that education here during the open enrollment period. So really some good changes to our plan and a continuation of the good things that we did last year based on our RFP. So at this point, I'd certainly take any questions that you may have.
Director Lind?
I have one. You're talking about this mental health zero cost, and then you said something about virtual care. Is that a part of that, or what?
Yeah,
Can
so
you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Director Lynn. So essentially, Healthiest You is a program that allows access to general practitioners, so doctors, and then also therapists, psychologists, or psychiatrists, depending on the need of the client, through a virtual environment. So if individuals have a need for that, they can go ahead and voluntarily elect to get that treatment through a virtual type meeting with that care provider. If they do that, there is zero cost to them. Okay? So we're paying for that on a per member per monthly basis, but the beautiful thing is we've already more than broken even on that 8 months in. And so we're removing that claim from our plan. So if you can imagine, let's say a psychologist visit might be a $300 expense, right? Right now, that individual saves that $300. The plan saves the $300, and then we're paying the $1,150 per member per month for that ability to have that individual access that. The other thing that I would point out is not only is cost important, but it's also access. Right now, specifically to your point, Director Lind, regarding mental health, it is very difficult to actually get an appointment with a practitioner. And so what the Healthiest You program has allowed us to do is actually guarantee a 7-day appointment wait period, as opposed to 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So really, it's about certainly cost and savings for the plan, but also it's access for our employees and the members that are on our plan.
That's an excellent benefit. Thank you.
That's amazing.
Yep,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Dr. Van Zyl?
One other thing I would share about that is in visiting with the folks on the committee as well, one of the things that we talked about was accessibility. By having the Healthiest You, the way it's set up, that maybe they just need to visit with somebody during their plan period instead of having to actually leave. So it's also something that we've tried to work with our associations on and our staff members to be able to say, hey, if you've got a break or something and you need to log on, you can take that time to do it instead of having to get a substitute or leaving the building. So we've heard that that's been beneficial and helpful to our staff as well. So it's got multiple layers to it, and it is kudos, as Aaron said, to our staff and to Sarah in our benefits HR department for trying to push that information out, because without this, we're talking a boatload more of claims that are coming into our system and don't get us to the renewal point that we're going to be at this year.
Right.
Any further questions from the board? Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Brenda.
All right, we'll move on to Bill Holmgren. Nope, you have something too.
So we have a recommendation for approval. I just wanted to let you know what the rate increases are.
Sure.
So that you know what it is you would be approving.
Thank you.
The increase will be 2.5% for employees and 2.5% for the district, for a total of a 5% increase.
So we have it listed as reports and then recommended action, so I appreciate sharing. They'll come back and
Okay.
make that motion
Okay.
on that. So if they have questions about that, they'll probably either ask you or Aaron to come back up.
Sounds good. Thank
Great,
you.
thanks, Brenda.
Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you. All right, so we have a budget recap from Bill Holmgren.
Coming to help.
Perfect. Yeah, it's good. Okay. Okay. Madam Chairs, school board members, Superintendent, hi, Dr. Van Zyl. Just a real recap for all the work that the board's been doing here the last couple of weeks. If we were back to last week. Last week at our special meeting on the 21st of March, the board approved $3.4 million worth of cuts for the fiscal year 24 budget. And last night, some more reductions of 1.8, almost $1.9 million. We also, at yesterday's meeting, the board approved a one-time adjustment of $1.9 million from staff development funds. And then pieces that failed, as you can see, we were $160,000 of two pieces of the recommendations that failed. And then we have three more items that have been tabled. I guess, again, that was the middle school schedule, the technology restructure, and the ALC sale and relocation. So as of today, we do have $5.3 million put together in cuts to the $7 million recommendation from the administration to take care of for next year's budget. So the question then for tonight for the board is whether you want to revisit any of these items this evening or not.
So when you get to that action item later on that says budget approval, that's what Bill is referring to, is if there's anything that you have questions on that you want to revisit and come back and have a conversation about, you'd have that ability. A couple other items to share with you that the timeline is moving on us a little bit. And what I mean by that, Sarah, who is in the HR department, shared that without some other action in regard to some of these other items, the timeline before any posting of positions is now April 28th. Because if you do something during spring break, if you have a special meeting, staff aren't here to be able to be on contracted days, so it pushes that out a while. Then after those recommendations have been made, decisions have been made, you're still talking about 14 days because you have 7 days to offer and accept, 7 days to appeal, have a hearing. So it's 14 days before they'll be able to finalize. The other component to that is if there are adjustments to the recommendation in positions that are offered or maybe reduced, they'll have to bring back in the administrators and do a reshuffling of the positions. Like, for example, when the conversation was about social studies positions, that would reshuffle all the work that the HR department and everybody has done because certifications of different people don't align to positions that they had matched to. So they'd have to bring those folks in, walk through that again. So just know that that's a component of it. You just need to be aware because I think you are starting to get some information from other staff members in regard to how they're feeling, the offers that they're getting, and just the uncertainty that they're facing in those particular times. So wanted to at least make you aware of that timeline as well. And if there are things that you wanted to discuss, you'll have that or take action on. You'll have that ability to discuss and either do it or not do it in upcoming items.
Chair.
Director Keller?
Dr. Van Zyl, can you, if I'm not mistaken, I'm hearing that we're losing a lot of staff every day that goes by. So just because the decisions aren't made and careers and family life are in flux, is that a valid concern?
I would say from our administrators, they've reached out to me and said they've got staff coming to them daily saying, where am I at? I've got offer in another district.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number of that, but obviously if they're coming to their administrators and administrators feel like they need to share it with me, it's just not one or two people that are coming to them with that concern.
Do you have any more comments or questions from the board on these items? No? Okay.
So are you asking, so we've already approved, like you said, the 5.3 million. So the question for us is, do we want to approve more of the tabled items or have discussions about those tonight to be able to vote on them so we can start moving on some of those other items as well?
Yes, that would be the later on in the recommended. We put it on there in case you wanted to do that. We weren't trying
Yep.
to assume that you did or
Yep.
didn't, but we knew that if we didn't do that, we'd be stuck. So you have the ability to do it or you have the ability not to do it.
So I'd like to have another discussion around the middle school schedule and making a decision on that this evening, as well as the technology restructure. I'd like that decision made by this evening. And I'd actually like to have a discussion on all 5 of those items this evening so we can make decisions on them.
Director Lind?
I have a question for the administration. You were charged with looking at some different scenarios going from last night's meeting. Are you ready to talk about that tonight?
We can share with you, I think that you received information from each one of those groups that you asked to put some things together for you. So I can speak to that. I can't speak for them, but hopefully you've had the ability to read. And I think Emily probably can speak to some of the items as well that were addressed because I know they visited with her.
That's fine
But
if you're comfortable with that.
yeah, we can speak to those particular items and give you what we know. And I think if you read the information that was presented from those folks, along with the other emails that you're getting on either side of that, you're getting inundated with information. So we'll do our best to explain everything.
So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like those 5 items all readdressed and decided on this evening so that our staff and our families can make decisions.
I haven't had a chance to read through all of the things that we received today, so I'm just looking at it from that standpoint. I don't know about other board members. Director Carly Anderson?
I know we got something from the middle schools, but or middle school principals, and something came from the elementary principals, but I don't.
Right,
know
and
what else
the
came.
elementary one, I mean, I noticed it right before I got here, so I haven't had a chance to read through that.
But I think said they were able to talk to it.
So
So,
Oh, excuse me.
Director Lind?
Does the board want to meet again in a special session? What is today? Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday?
I'm-
look
we
at
have
this?
I can't.
we have to do it 3 days out.
We have to do what, 3 days out?
72
Correct.
hours out.
Okay, 3 days out. I'm just,
Would be Friday.
I won't be here.
okay.
I'll be here.
I think when you get to that item, that's probably when you make
Oh,
that
you're right.
decision. Either decide to do something or not do something, or to have a special session. I think that's where you would do that in your recommended actions.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to the recommended actions, with the first one being the approval of the medical and dental rates.
So Brenda can come back up, but she shared that with you, and as Aaron shared the information, I guess the only other thing that I would add, and Aaron, if you want to agree or disagree, you can, rates around the metro area have been much more significant than 5%? Haven't they been running 9 to 10% on increases, or have they gone down since our last meeting?
Yeah, I would say that trend, so medical inflation is running anywhere from 7 to 12%. It's a little bit lower here in the metro. I think a 5% increase in the aggregate is good for us.
So I just wanted to give you that for comparison, and I think the folks on the insurance committee, I think, feel pretty confident in the information that they shared. I see a couple of them shaking their head. Yes, so to get 5% and to be able to split it, because our requirements by contract are 50-50 on those increases, so that's where you come up with the 2.5 and 2.5. So if you have questions either for Brenda or Aaron, feel free.
I do have a question. When we had a chance to look over the staff survey data, one of the items that was brought up by staff members had to related to our medical plan. And many were offering this as a cost-saving measure, and there were just questions about it from the information that I read through, asking about couples. So if you have like two people within the district that are a couple and receiving insurance, that it's free. Can you speak to that, or?
Bill can speak to it.
Oh, perfect, thank you. I just want clarification on that based on what I read.
It is correct. If we have two members in the district that are both working here in the district, they do get a free plan, okay? But the two plans together into one, it still costs us less money than having two plans. So that's why we do that. So there is no cost savings
Okay,
to go and split them up.
thank you for clarifying that.
Helpful.
Any other questions from board members on this? Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the medical and dental rates?
So moved.
Motion by Director Carly Anderson. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Director Thompson. Any further questions or discussion by the board? Okay, so we'll go ahead and move to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so on to our next recommended action, which is the budget approval. We have, all 5 items are asked to be looked at here, so we'll just kind of work through those. Can we put them up there so we can see them?
You have to approve.
We have to approve it first.
Yeah.
Well, I thought we were going to talk through each item.
No, you're talking about each item. And the reason we put budget approval on there is that you could either approve items of the budget reduction or choose not to, or at some point we have to know when you want to get together to have
Maybe we should-
that discussion and finalized.
Each item.
So if you want to go back a slide or two, can you, Bill?
Okay, for tonight, we put this summary slide up. I do not have last night's.
Go to the one that had
The one that was on there is fine.
One that you just.
there you go,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one
I'm
right
sorry.
there.
There we go.
I'm looking at it.
That's
wondering
okay.
what's the question. Yeah.
They're all on there,
It
so
wasn't up
that's
there, now
fine.
it is. So those are your 5 items that either had some motions made or were tabled. So you can start however you'd like.
Director Kelleher?
So I'd like to start with the middle school proposal, and I know we received something today from the 3 middle school principals to help better explain the middle level and teaming and what the best practices are, and invited some of the members to go and learn a little bit more about that. One of the statements that they make in this proposal to us is making decisions in a timely manner is pivotal in our current environment. As we wait, high-quality teachers are leaving our school district to attain employment in surrounding districts. As we wait, morale in school buildings, staff communities are degrading as student groups are pitted against each other over who will be reduced and which subject is important. As we wait, we are losing valuable time to hire the best teachers in Lakeville. So I think that, and that's from all 3 of our middle school principals, and I was hearing that from the high school principals as well. So I really think that the proposal that they put before us last night, there were 4 different proposals, and I think there was one for 500 and some thousand and one for 248,000 at proposal 2 and 3. And I think we need to make up our mind on which one of those we're going to accept and move forward on this so that our principals can get focused back on the kids in the classroom and our staff there can know which direction to move forward with.
Any comments from the board on that? Director Thompson?
I haven't had enough time to read the letter that might have been sent, so I apologize that I haven't gotten to that yet. But I would like to delay this vote or this topic for another time.
Director Shinley?
I agree. I have a meeting set up with the principals right now for Thursday, and so I'd just like to sit down and have a candid conversation with them, just to make sure I understand.
I think the part that I'm struggling with is, particularly for the middle school schedule, is that I haven't really had a chance to hear from the teachers. And I don't feel like, I received a few emails from teachers saying that they had alternative options for the schedule and that they didn't have a voice in this process. And I think that's valid. I've felt a little struggle myself through this process, and I guess I was hopeful that we could have some teacher voice as part of that finance committee, where we would be able to have some time and really look at this and make sure that it's not just a cut or restructure, but that we're making the best decision for our students.
If I can, you've got a couple things to remember. You're out of compliance with your middle school schedule. So getting in compliance is going to cause a change within your system. And not to completely disagree with you, but speaking to all three administrators, they have had opportunity to visit with their staff, and many of the things that they've shared from the staff opinion haven't fit into the schedule in order to make it work. Because you can, as they shared last night, you can take one piece out and it'll work for 6th grade, but it messes up 7th and 8th grade.
Correct.
So they have gone through that process. And I think if you read their email that they sent you, you've got 3 administrators who have stood before you with almost a century's worth of experience telling you academically that they have put the best schedule together that they can without making increases to that middle school system, because we don't have the dollars to be able to do that. And so, again, I'm just sharing with you their vantage point. They're not here. I did read what they sent. They shared a majority of it even with you last night, but they felt it was important enough that they put something together for you so that you could see that they were not trying to not put together another schedule for you, but they were telling you that asking for another option was not really viable to them, because they presented to you the 2 options that they felt were the best, and they were coming back and saying option number 3 is what they would recommend to you as the people who run those buildings.
And I just want to reiterate, I haven't had a chance to read that email, and I would appreciate the opportunity to meet with some of those staff members too. Director Carly Anderson?
Sometimes I just want us to reflect on kind of what the options are as well, because if we're looking at the different proposals, one of them is a $248,000 savings. This proposal to me is a massive hit to structure and schedule, and something that would be very, I would guess, costly to implement and difficult to change down the road. And so in my, if I'm being frank and honest, my opinion is we don't make this change based on a budget cut if it makes sense to make it because that's really what the administrators feel is in the best interest of the students down the road, that we make it then, but that we consider other options, like we haven't heard about if we raise fees and for the middle school activities, that how we might be able to do things like, for instance, if parents aren't paying for school meals next year, that's a huge savings for parents like me who pay for middle school meals. There's PTO options to cover some of those expenses. So if I'm choosing between an option of cut, I think what I have been very clear about that I'm struggling with is the 7-week rotation for some of those things that don't seem like a feasible option to me. And I would rather, at this point, choose changing middle school activities than a massive overhaul of the schedule at the middle school.
Dr. Van Zyl?
You're going to have to change your schedule. There's no way around it to be in compliance. So I'm not arguing. I'm just saying I understand what you're saying, but you also have had your 3 administrators stand in front of you and say there is no way for them to be able to do what they need to do to be in compliance. It's going to impact staff, move people around in certification, and a component of that is how they are able to provide more opportunities for kids rather than less opportunities for kids. And again, if you didn't have opportunity to read that email, I know they sent it this morning trying to get it to you. They've laid that all out. And again, if you choose not to do anything, again, you have the conversations. If you don't, you just need to know that that timeline continues to bump a little bit further out in regard to where you're going to do it, whether you make the decision tonight, you schedule something during the spring break. The soonest that something's going to be able to be finalized is with staff is April 28th. So you just need to know that that's the target as of right now. You go longer than that, it keeps going outside of that.
Chair,
Director Kelleher?
although this is attached to the budget reductions, again, being in compliance is the number one reason for this change right now. And so whether we talk about it in regards to the budget or not is independent of what needs to be done. And if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Van Zyl, if we don't have the discussion centered around the budget adjustments and you need to change programming to become compliant, that's something administratively that can be done, correct?
I'm 95% sure on that.
Yep.
Because that's something the state won't allow you to be out of compliance.
Right, so
And so they say, here's what you have to do, or they say, give us a remediation plan, and then we're forced to make that remediation change.
So we can either have that discussion at a board level and make that decision, or we can let them do the compliance and we can deal with budget issues later with the middle level.
And I'm going to look at Dr. McDonald. Is what I said accurate? You probably have a better understanding of it than I do.
So we can either own it or not own it.
How long have we been out of compliance?
I don't think that's the right question to be asking. We need to be compliant.
I think I would say this: when you find out that you're out of compliance, the job is to fix it. And if we don't fix it, then, as I said, the state has the ability to tell us how we need to fix it. So I can't speak for people in the past why they did or didn't fix it. I can just tell you that morally and ethically, the right thing to do is fix things that are out of compliance, regardless of how long they've been out of compliance. As soon as you know about it, I believe as an administrator and as a board, we're required to set the example of following the state expectations and guidelines that are there.
Director Thompson?
I feel like is the job to fix it in 2 weeks, or is the job to fix it in 30 days or 90 days? I mean, obviously, we've got some digital learning specialists that might be out of compliance. Does that mean that we need to make changes to them right now in 2 weeks or 30 days? So
If you remember,
I
your
don't want to rush.
Sorry, if you remember, your digital learning specialists are taken care of through the end of the year.
End of the year.
So as soon as they were found out they were out of compliance, our administrative team, HR, worked with them to get their out-of-field placement so
Got
that
it.
they became in compliance. If they were to continue to work through next year with their certification, then they won't be, because we won't allow that to take place because they'd be out of compliance after June 30th.
Director Thompson?
Well, since we're continuously having conversations about this, I think there is good intent that we are making progress. We're having dialogue. I think the state would. My hope is that they would give us some grace and some time to kind of figure this out instead of here's 2 weeks, figure it out right now and make a decision. So I propose that we hold off on this.
I'm not saying the state's giving you 2 weeks to fix it. I'm saying what the state will say is you have X amount of time to become in compliance. They probably would work with us through the end of the year. The other issue that you're faced with is as we've talked about, being out of compliance means having adjusting staff. And so it really is a conversation about compliance and how do we get our staff taken care of, because the longer that waits, the more and more anxiety and stress we create for them. So I'm not saying you have to rush through the process, but there is a sense of urgency. I think you're getting those emails that I'm getting as well from staff saying, hey, we appreciate your questions, we appreciate the time you're taking, but you also need to know that we are the people that are in front of the kids and we're not feeling good because we're not sure where we sit and where we stand on some of this. Because when you talk about a proposal and it affects one group of people, and then you say, well, what about doing this? And then it affects another group of people, and say, well, what about doing this? It affects another group of people, and now it's like, well, you've seen the emails. Social studies teachers are saying, well, how about us instead of language arts? Language arts teachers are saying this, what about us instead of, so now it's becoming a pitting of one against the other, which I don't think is good for the climate and the culture of our schools. So I think that's what they're asking for, is to be able to make a decision so they know where they stand, be able to address the situation in a timely manner. I can't tell you exactly what that timely manner is. I just know that they're feeling a sense of urgency, which I think should lead us all to have a sense of urgency to try to address a situation for the people that are standing in front of our kids every day.
Director Carly Anderson.
This is just something that I think one thing we've asked is how, because I don't think we're alone in the compliance issue necessarily with other, or in comparison to other districts, or it seems like this is maybe something. What I don't know is how other districts are handling this. And so I keep coming back to what happened in 2019, what I personally voted in favor of in terms of what we wanted in our middle schools. Whether or not that was in a ballot, it doesn't necessarily matter to me what those words were specifically, but what we promised our community or told them we would deliver on, and this would be changing that. And this is where I would rather see if that levy gets renewed. If it doesn't, we have to go back to the drawing board. But we have some flex money here to be, so I'm in agreement that I think we should make a decision, but I think we have some different options in terms of what that decision looks like.
Director Lind.
Just a couple of points from my point of view. I know we've had emails saying that some staff don't feel they've had input into the process, and I've had emails saying staff has. So I know the middle school principals and any principal, if they're going to be making changes in their building, are going to have staff input with it. They're the ones who have to live with them. You know, that's the bottom line. So I'm assured that there has been staff input. I'm not saying that the perception of some people out there is that they haven't had their input, but I think generally most of them have. Secondly, on proposal 3, which seems the one that the middle school the principals would like, we must also keep in mind we still have to find an additional, almost $300,000 that was assigned to the middle school. We still have to find that. So we have to keep that in mind. What are we going to do about that? And finally, we talk about how this is stressing out staff. And that's true. That's so very true. But my point is, if the teachers are stressed out because of the extended delay, don't you think the kids feel that too?
Yep.
Director Thompson.
And for more transparency, I'm just reading the memo super quickly here. So there was, I believe how I interpret it was that there's a recommendation to go with proposal 3 that includes being in compliance, that includes adopting the wheel model that has, I think, 7th hour with 4 or 5 different options in a 7-week period. And I believe from yesterday that was a $248,000 difference, and an FTE reduction of 3 FTEs is what I recall. So, I've got a question. When is our next working session scheduled?
April 11th.
Okay. Thank you. Can I propose that maybe have a discussion on when could we have another meeting together as a team via special meeting? I'll be here. I'm here all next week. So like, I don't know if everyone's here, if we can make a decision. You're on. Nope. Okay. So April 11th would be the next date that we would be able to have continued dialogue around this. And so let's use that as a date. What does that mean if a decision were to occur on April 11th? What does that timeline look like then? Is it plus 28 days or?
April 11th, staff would be back in on the 11th. So you're, depending on what you make the decision on, at a minimum, depending on what you do, if you took one of those proposals, they have an idea of who would be there. You're still talking, I think, do you remember the email that we got from Sarah? Did it say that if that was figuring the 10th was the day we met?
It would be late April, early May.
Yeah, it would move it in. It'd probably move it from the 28th a day or two, so you'd be talking the end of April, early May, so it would adjust the time frame. If you made, again, that's factoring those components in, and that's, again, where Sarah shared with us it would fall.
Director Carly Anderson.
Do we have any numbers on the, because I know something I asked about yesterday was if we raise the fees, what that would, the difference there would be?
He's still working on that. He's looking at different scenarios that are out there. Some of them are contractually bound. So, because like, for example, he's like, what if we go from 5 days to 4 days? Well, that's part of a coach's contract. That's something you'd have to work through in order to make an adjustment in the number of days at the middle school level, because he's trying to look at not only fees, but other ways to generate some dollars to get to that dollar amount to break even. So Aaron's working on that.
For cost of middle school activities? Are we talking about the same thing?
Last night you had asked for them to take a look at that, so that Aaron's taking a look at how they can adjust those middle school fees to be able to offset the $300,000 difference that's there. So he's looking at fees and other ways to be able to do that.
Okay. Director Kelleher.
So the 2019 levy operating, more electives for middle school students. By adding teachers and by adding 25 more teachers, students will have access to exploratory courses and new elective offerings, such as world languages and coding. Increased elementary classroom resources to match ever-increasing enrollment, increased funding to support social emotional needs of our students with full-time counselors at each elementary school. Greater school security against our threat assessment and potential threats district-wide, and the additional information technology IT support. IT strategist and additional IT support personnel will maintain staff and student devices, tech systems, and infrastructure. So I believe the way we stand right now and what the administration is proposing supports everything that was voted on in the 2019 levy.
Doesn't the proposal cut coding? I thought that was part of the proposal, was that we were cutting coding, which you...
It says more electives and increased electives, and those were such as, they gave examples of what those were. But the increased options and exploratory was what it was focused on. It was mostly on a lot focused on the exploratory and the wheel, which gives you the teaming in the house that we had. We were trying to bring back an element of that.
Director Thompson.
I make a motion to table this topic until April 11th.
What?
Let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. I make a motion to table the middle school schedule until April 11th.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Thompson to table this until April 11th. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Director David Anderson. Is there any further discussion on this?
So then the 11th won't be a work session then?
It'll be a special
We'd have to
session.
move it to a special session, correct? All right, let's put it to a vote. All in favor,
Do you have
say.
discussion?
We
Do we have
did.
a-
We just.
We have a
just-
second?
Yeah, I was, yeah,
Oh,
you just
I'm
didn't say
sorry.
anything.
My concern is that I think we really have to make sure that we finish this on 11th. I think it's imperative that we get it done. So that any questions that we have or any information that we receive from the district, we need to, as individually, look at that and get our questions answered.
I agree. So is there additional information that that board members feel like they need that we could bring to that or provide before that April 11th session that would give them the information they need to make this decision?
Well, I think part of it will be when we talk about the fees and the.
Okay.
I don't know if any other board member has questions or.
Can just,
Dr. Van Zyl?
so again, I guess just for my own clarification, the fee conversation is separate from the schedule conversation. The schedule has to be changed regardless of the fees. So I don't want you to get those two intermingled and saying, well, it's the fees will decide whether or not we have to change a schedule. You have to change a schedule regardless of what those fees are. So just make sure you keep those two separate, because unless I interpreted it wrong, and if I did, I apologize. I don't want them to be commingled. They're two very separate items.
They are. I think that that's related to Proposal 3, which Director Lind stated that we needed additional funds to be able to approve that, because it's different than the original proposal that was on there, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm just concerned where those funds are coming from.
Right. Director Carly Anderson, did you have something to add?
I think I would just want to come at this, obviously, fully understanding what the options are, even if, I want to make it very clear that I appreciate all that our principals are doing, and I don't think any of us asking questions up here is trying to undermine them. But, one thing that we just don't have a good number on is if we didn't do the wheel, what might other districts be doing to be in compliance? And so when I've asked that, it hasn't been answered. So it would be nice to just see if there was, even if it costs more money, it would be helpful to know what those numbers are.
Dr. Van Zyl?
That was asked last night, and the answer was they have more staff and more resources to be
Yeah.
able to address that. So that was asked, and they, from what I remember, they did give that answer in regard to what those other districts do to offset those areas. They have more staff. Their schedule may be different in regard to the amount of time that their staff is in front of kids. So I think they shared both of those items last night. But that was what I thought I heard, and maybe nobody else did. So I apologize if I am not saying that right.
I think they said that, but it was, I just want to understand how much more would it be? And obviously you don't want to add in money at this point, but if it can be made up elsewhere, that's something I just want to know that we can consider.
Director Kelleher?
I don't want to go backwards. I'm going to go backwards a little bit. I believe when we were talking about the middle level and tying it to the levy referendum, it was world language and coding. And I believe if we move forward with what they've proposed, that still does have a world language and coding, or IT and coding in that proposal, I believe. So the commitment is there from the levy side. And, Carly, I understand and appreciate what you're asking, but that's something that it's a nice to know for next time, but I don't think it's something that we're going to be able to address with this decision now that has to be made from a certification side. And I'm going to say it again, we're starting to get emails, and if you're out in the buildings and you're talking to the teachers and the staff, these delayed decisions are very, very concerning. And, we are trying to do our best to protect and preserve our quality teachers, and that's going to get challenging, not with every month or every week, but with every day that goes by that we don't make a decision here. And the morale is going to be bad, and I believe what Terry said is, whether it's intentional or not, it will feed into our students.
Director Lind?
We have listened to the middle school principals twice, maybe 3 times, I can't recall.
Can you pull this closer?
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. And I trust their judgment. I think it came with the best plan. I think what we're doing is second-guessing them, frankly. They know what they're doing. I urge that we approve this tonight, or I'm not approve on it, to vote on it tonight and move on. I think they've met a lot of the things that we had concerns about. Are they going to be able to meet it all? Probably not. And there's just not the money to do that. Are there things going to be affected? Of course there is. But I think they've done the best job. And I would like to deal with it tonight.
I'm just trying to pull up the slide deck so I can double check on the proposal 3. I'd like to see it. I'm working on it.
Can I call on myself?
Staff, do you have the
Director Thompson?
proposals that were presented last night that we could post to look at? Okay, thank you.
So this proposal was, or not this particular proposal, but the initial budget proposals were provided on March 13th, and so April 11th is less than 30 days. I think that's reasonable. I mean, while I understand there are some folks that are maybe in some positions that have some concerns with some ambiguity. I completely get that and understand that. But again, back to Director Carly Anderson's comments, this is a structural change. This is a new concept. This is a wheel. And I'll have to double check. I don't know if coding is still there or world language versus world languages. And if we're doing a world language, I don't know if 7 weeks is enough to really consider it as a world language. And so I think, again, less than 30 days for the board to review, all of the budget reduction proposals, but more importantly, more than 24 hours would be maybe ideal to think through the proposal 3.
Chair?
Sorry, Director Kelleher.
So 30 days should be sufficient for board members to be able to review anything, honestly, with this. But this hasn't just been in work for 30 days. It has been in the works for several months by our administrators who we hire and our educators to do this, know the system, know the laws, and know what needs to be done. And so, again, I'm going to repeat what Director Lind said. I trust our educators to make the decisions for what is best for our kids with the research and the care and the time that they have invested in these proposals. The biggest time that's been invested here is answering questions and bringing people up to speed with our systems and our schools. And I appreciate that dialogue. I think it's been great discussion for everybody listening and around this board table. But I do think that there's a huge impact to the system with delaying it, not a month, not a week, but every day.
Can we move through that so we can see what the elective options are? Thank you.
So you're looking for 3.
Proposal 3 is what I'm looking for.
Can I, having visited with them briefly today, I think the thing that you need to be mindful of that they shared with me is that you don't need to be hung up on the schedule. And they think from the middle school folks, and I'm sorry they're not here to be able to speak to it, but you don't have to look at schedule for schedule, because you have to remember it's a convoluted situation when 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade have to work in sync to be able to get those things pulled off. So when they have those things taking place in one grade level, it impacts another grade level if you make an adjustment. And their conversation about the wheel that seems to be something is they wrote to you about that, is that you have to remember middle school level is about exploring. It's about giving them exposure to different things. And so when it says world language, it's not about mastery of the language, it's about the culture. It's about exposure to the language. It's about why are this culture and ethnicity different than maybe I am. So it's a whole concept. It's just not about learning Spanish or French or ALS or any of those things. It's about that component being a broader spectrum, and how they build on 6th grade into 7th grade into 8th grade. It's not the same thing grade level to grade level. It actually is building upon one another is what they shared with me.
Director Lind?
Also, we have to keep in mind that they're dealing with, that wheel is actually dealing with a lot of the compliance issues that we have. They feel that's the way to go. I don't really want to mess with it and have them try to be faced with trying to make those compliance issues in other areas.
I don't want to use the word transparency. I guess for me, it's an integrity thing. I want to make sure that when we're looking at the wheel options, that we're honoring what was decided upon in the levy, especially moving forward when we have to go to our community and ask for levy dollars again. If we did not maintain our integrity with the last levy, where's the trust for our community that we would maintain it with this one? So I think it is important to look at those wheel classes in the schedule to make sure that we are providing the options that we said that we would. Director Lind.
I would say in response that our middle school principals, I'm sure, are aware of what their money is supposed to go through and have included in their schedule.
They did.
So, and if you look at what this wheel rotation is showing, the IT STEM is where the coding is sitting, and the intro to Spanish is the access to a world language and the culture, and it's adding actually in more opportunities, and that's what that was, how it was stated, is adding additional electives, and that is what that real rotation did, and the intent of that, because we didn't have the teaming, we had the houses, and then they went away, and we brought it back to a teaming, which was kind of a hybrid between it, and that's rotation is what the community was voting for.
Director Thompson?
Can you help me understand why health was added for grade 6 and why it was not in the current state?
Emily, can you speak to that? I
that-
know
is that
that
a
when in
statement?
my conversation with them, you had asked them to bring ELA back, and so they were trying to figure out how to be able to do that. They did speak to health in their email that they wrote to you, if I remember correctly, in regard to not only is it physical health, but it's mental health, social emotional awareness. That's involved in that health concept as well, which was an expansion compared to what they have now. So did you hear this question?
Correct. It's just pulling health out of what used to be a health and PE combination and teaching that as an individual course. So that would be that would occur in order to provide the every other day additional dip of ELA throughout the course of the year. So instead of 2 full year-round courses, you have basically a year-round English language arts class. You have an ELA class that would be every other day to provide a little additional support. And then in order to do that, you need a class to go to pair with that to place the students in. And so that would be a standalone health opportunity.
Director Thompson?
So we're pulling health out of the current Phi-Ed. Like, how long is health usually in day one or in Phi-Ed? Is it like a 7-week course? Is it a 3-week course normally?
I'd have to confirm Director Thompson on that with the principals.
I'm guessing it's a 9-week.
A 9-week course, but now we're giving it a full semester.
It's every other day.
Okay, but if it's in a calendar year, it's a full semester, right? Or am I not understanding the math?
Correct.
Okay.
The issue is, again, similar to what I said last night, when they were given a goalpost to shoot for, they shot for that goalpost. They were asked to then create another goalpost. And in order to do that, they have to manipulate the schedule in order to make that work. So whether it's 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 minutes, they've put together the schedule that they believe is the best thing to be able to present to you based off of the change that you asked them to do from proposal 2 because you wanted to have ELA brought back in, and that's the way they were able to do that. And they looked at it numerous ways and have been bleary-eyed and and have tried to be able to do that. So again, I would say that you've got 3 experts of middle school that have stood before you and put together a schedule, and some of the why is it this way, why is it that way, they've gone through that process to be able to figure out exactly how they make this work, and I think you have to be able to give them that trust, whether that's today or April 11th, to be able to know that they're the folks who are boots on the ground with their teaching staff and have done this for quite a while to be able to make this happen for you.
Director Carly Anderson.
And I'm just, I guess what I keep coming back to is if they hadn't been given the goalpost, what would this look like? And what I mean is we're obviously in a budget situation, and so they did absolutely what they were told to do, and that's, I'm not questioning them at all. They have absolutely risen to the task and presented us with this option. But to me, if this option did not come before us, or it wouldn't come before us in another time when we're not in this budget crisis, then that's where I'm questioning making such an overhaul if we can recoup elsewhere and figure out a schedule that would be in compliance. And I realize it would be more money, but I would just want to know how much. That's where I come back to.
And I would say, then you have that same question about everything that's been presented to you. Because there's not any item that's been brought to you because they feel like, hey, this is specifically the perfect thing to be able to do. I would guarantee that almost every department would come and say, in a perfect world, had we the money that we have, our LEAF staff would have more hours, our teachers would have more pay, our special ed department would have more resources, our middle school would provide something else, we'd have more mental health services at the high school across the system. So to boil it down and say this is the only thing that's being looked at that way, I don't think is the way you can look at it, because nobody is bringing a proposal to you that says, hey, this is what we would present to you in a perfect world given all the money if that were not an option. That's a reality that we have to face. Money is that, and we are out of compliance, so that's the target that they had to shoot for.
Director Thompson.
So I think what I'm hearing from Director Carly Anderson is that what would a model look like if there weren't any parameters? And I think that's a reasonable ask. And so that's a proposal 5, and those are things that maybe we can look into on April 11th, which is where we are targeting to reconvene.
Director Lind.
I don't understand. Why are we looking at what the model would look like? We can't do the model. I mean, why are we looking at something like that? We have to make cuts. Explain that to me.
Director Carly Anderson.
I don't think what we know is what is all on the table right now.
Pardon?
I don't think we know everything on the table right now. But there's,
Us or the people making the decisions and in the classrooms?
I think what I asked earlier was about the fees, and I get that we would still have to make a change to a schedule. But my thought with this is just trying to, I know we can't, I would love to save everything, but this is a huge change that would be difficult to change down the road. And the costs that we would incur to make such a change, and then try to change anything down the road if this really isn't best practices. So if what I heard was all districts around us are doing this, it would make me feel a lot more confident in this decision. But if these principals are coming forward because they were tasked to cut that much money, then that's where I just want to know what the options are.
The task I believe that was at hand was to become compliant. So we'll separate that. If we're not going to take this out and vote on it from a budget adjustment perspective, then the administration will be doing, starting tomorrow, whatever it takes to be compliant. And then we will just have a different budget discussion with a different number that has to be filled up. So we will separate this. This will be separated. They will become compliant. And I'm challenged with the fact that you're not comfortable with it.
Hey.
I get it. I get that you have to be comfortable because you're voting on something, but we also have to know that there is so much more at stake because there's a lot of learning that's going on here. And until you're very comfortable with it, I don't understand why there isn't the trust for our administrations to move forward. And, I'd like to almost take a recess and have you guys take the time to read the letter that we got from the middle school and that we got from the elementary principals, because they are both talking about how hard they're trying and they want to be trusted and know what the work that they're doing for our kids and the recommendations that they have brought forward. And that's also with the DLS, with the wanting to protect them and to cut the tech, cut the tech is exactly going against what that levy referendum said. They took all that into mind when they did this. We have to make a decision. We need these families to be able to move on. And I am not comfortable waiting till April 11th, which means our decision will be, I think, sometime in May, to be able to let people know which ones aren't going to have jobs by June. And there won't be any opportunity out there for them to find jobs. So what's going to happen is the ones that think they might be leaving are going to go apply for jobs and accept offers from other places. We are destroying everything that we built because you guys aren't comfortable and aren't trusting our leaders. And I'm very challenged on that. We are supposed to be here looking out for the best interest of this school district, not your middle school children, and not
Point of order, let's keep our
individual-
remarks factual and not personal. Thank
It
you.
is, though. They've been bringing up their children in all these decisions, talking about personal decisions. We are here to talk about what's best interest of the school district. And we need to elevate it to the school district level, please, and listen to our administrators make these decisions so we can move on and so they can move on.
We're going to call a 5-minute recess. All right, welcome back from our recess. We'll go ahead and get started back into session. I want to start by saying that these are tough conversations that we are having up here, but tough conversations can be had with dignity and respect and kindness. I want to remind board members of our policy 209, which is our code of ethics, and making sure that we're maintaining that at the table. Like I said, these are tough conversations to have. There's a lot of emotion behind these decisions because it impacts our kids, all of our kids, and everybody sitting up here feels like the students within our district are our kids. That is our responsibility. So I just want to make sure that we keep our focus where it should be. All right. Mr. Holmgren, did you want to come back up and so we could continue the discussion around the middle school options? Dr. Van Zyl?
Just one thing to add, and I know it's difficult to be able to maybe sometimes separate these things, but you have to remember there still is that line between management and governance. Developing of a schedule is really a management issue. It's not a governance issue. Your job is similar to what you shared the other day. Hey, an important thing for us is the academic side of things. Hey, we don't want to lose the ELA aspect of it. To me, that's you sharing the priorities of what you have. Then the administrative team comes back and builds that schedule based off of that information to the best they can, along with the compliance and the standards and aspects that are there. And I know it's hard to separate that because in this particular case, it's in regard to some financial components as well. And so I'm just being mindful of that. In case people were wondering why there's sometimes that conversation, there are some things that are driven that from an administrative and a governance component that it's sometimes hard to separate that line. And I would just say from a schedule aspect of things, that's normally an administrative driven aspect based off of the priorities that you as a board have set for them. And I think that's what they've tried to do to the best of their ability. And I don't think anybody's arguing that our administrators aren't trying to do that, but I just wanted to explain that maybe one more time.
Okay. Director Thompson?
Yeah, I would agree that, the school board should not be in the management of role. So as a school board, I don't like these options. So I would like to see a proposal 5. So.
Well, and I just want to add, just to show that information is still coming in, I'm sitting here reading an email saying that the current proposal doesn't make us in compliance because we have to offer 2, and they have to be able to take 2, and in this option, they can only take 1 at a time. So again, I just feel like I don't have the information.
I would prefer to hear the information from the
Right.
yeah.
Is that an accurate comment?
No, Proposal 3 does get us in compliant in terms of our offerings.
Director Carly Anderson?
I think if I read the email correctly, the question was about, does one of them have to be dance or theater? So you have to offer 3 and require 2 or something. Does one of them have to be dance or theater? Is that not an accurate interpretation?
It doesn't have to be. We just have to provide the appropriate number of offerings over the course of the year. And so that's something as we are developing our classes that we will make sure that that those classes do meet the required standards to meet the arts credits. Technically, they're credits, but they're more standards-based because they don't get high school credit for those courses at the middle level. But that would be part of the planning process. So if we moved forward with the exploratory classes, what we would do is we would work with our teachers and our director of teaching and learning at the secondary level to make sure that all of those courses are in compliance. Obviously, we wouldn't put something in that didn't get us into compliance when we're developing those wheels. And then just because, for clarification, the coding, although would not be a standalone course anymore, what we would look at doing is incorporating that into other of the wheel courses. Likely it will be media studies, but it could also go into the IT STEM area to provide not just coding like a code.org experience, but also perhaps experiences in robotics and other areas too, as an exploration.
Director Thompson?
I am uncomfortable with coding to 7 weeks. I just feel like there's so much value in coding, and it sounds to me after what I heard earlier that it was part of, as an example, world languages and coding. And so having that part of the 7-wheel, yeah, it probably does maybe qualify for it, but coming from a whole semester of coding that our kids have already had experienced, and I don't know. That's all. I don't know.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. I think that's, if I remember correctly from before the recess, that was to table this proposal right now until April 11th. We've had some discussion around it. Is the board ready to vote on that? Okay. All in favor of tabling the middle school proposal until April 11th, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
So we have 5-2, 2 nays of Director Kelleher and Director Lind. I think we're on the wrong slideshow now.
Probably.
Sorry.
The other items that you have are the LEAF
Yeah, it's-
contracts, the Tech DLS, the ALC, and the K Art STEM. So if any of those are other options for you.
I'm trying to pull it up.
I thought we.
It wasn't up there.
Can't find it.
Is one of the other.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. He pulled them back up. So you got the kindergarten STEM art adjustment, the 260-day contract with LEAF. You just talked about middle school. You got technology restructure and ALC. So those, you got 4 left if you want to discuss any of those.
Are there any items that the board feels comfortable with discussing tonight? Director Thompson?
I would like to bring up kindergarten STEM adjustments, just so that I've got better understanding and clarity around that particular program. I heard yesterday, yesterday, that kindergarten teachers have STEM via push-in. And so can someone explain what that means again?
So currently, our STEM program at the elementary level is only grades 1 through 5. Those teachers work with individual classes, providing a wide variety of units on a wide variety of topics related to the STEM area. Our STEM teachers have done an absolutely incredible job of their scope and sequence from 1-5 to ensure that those experiences are not repeated. They build upon the skills that they do earlier in the year so that they can do different things later in the year and then in the subsequent grades. So that currently is our model in terms of STEM. Since we started STEM, we have not offered STEM at the kindergarten level, so that's inconsistent across our system.
Director Thompson?
So do kindergartens at all then get STEM in any capacity?
No,
Okay.
not in our current schedule.
Okay.
Currently, right, currently.
And so can you clarify, I keep hearing this push and I'm trying to better understand what does that mean, and are kindergarten teachers going above and beyond the requirements that they have to teach and then still do STEM off to the side, or do they, or I'm trying to understand what push-in is, if they do that or do they not?
Yeah, so push-in really refers to when the specialist teacher pushes into the classroom. There are 2 ways that can look. Either that STEM teacher is leading the lesson with the students individually, or they're partnering with a teacher to teach a lesson, or they're supporting a teacher to be able to do the lesson on their own. So it depends on the situation. But our STEM teachers do have both direct and indirect service time, where they are actually working directly with students, and then where they're working with teachers as well.
Director Thompson?
And not every kindergarten gets that. It just depends on who has.
We get no kindergarten students have STEM experience right now.
I meant to ask, not every classroom has push-in, so some do and some don't. Is that correct? I guess I'm not understanding.
Director Lind?
I think I can clarify this a little bit. I think I can clarify it a little bit. In some buildings, the STEM teacher just does it, wants to go into the classroom. There's no push-in that I understand in any kindergarten. I could be wrong, in any elementaries. But yes, some STEM teachers have enough time that they voluntarily come in and do things with kindergartners. It's not practiced across the district at all, and it's very limited.
And I think, and you can correct me again if I'm wrong, part of the reason that if you have to do push-in is because you also have somebody who's not certified to be in that class by themselves. So you can't have a non-certified person teaching that class. So the kindergarten teacher, if it's a push-in, has to be in the classroom with the person if they're not K-certified, which it sounds like some of ours are. So some of them have the ability, correct me if I'm wrong, they are kindergarten certified, some of them aren't. So that would be the reason if somebody is going into another reason why, if there is some push-in programs, it's because of the certification, similar to any other class. If Carly and I are both teaching and she's certified in a grade level, I can go support her and help her teach, but I can't be the main teacher of that lesson if I'm not certified in what she's teaching.
Got it.
Director Thompson?
How many STEM teachers do we have? So how many STEM certified teachers do we have? How many do we have, and then how many are certified to do kindergarten? Because I'm assuming they would move.
You know, I'd have to go back and look the exact number. I believe that we have 4 that are not case certified, and Sarah's probably not here, but she could speak to that. We could certainly get you
That's
the
correct.
specific number. Okay, thank you.
I think it was shared
and then
last
we
night.
have 1 STEM specialist at every building right now at the elementary level.
So if we have 8 elementary, then half are not kindergarten certified.
Correct.
So what is the level of effort to be certified? Is it like another?
So it is dependent, and I would definitely rely on Sarah to provide you the specifics, but my understanding in speaking with her is that it's less of a process if you have taught first grade or if you've worked with first grade. So for example, if you have a 1-5 license and you've taught in first grade, there is a provision that you could potentially be licensed in K fairly easily because you have taught that next grade, that subsequent grade level at the primary level. For the rest that have not ever taught in a first grade classroom as a classroom teacher, they would have to get a kindergarten certification. And my understanding is, I believe what Sarah said last night was that was about a 6 to 8 week course. It was $750. She could verify that certainly with you in order to do that. And I think she said the first one starts in May sometime.
That's correct. Director Lind?
It's been hours dealing with this, but I thought I heard somewhere that STEM teachers that aren't certified would co-teach in kindergarten with the teacher and give them the STEM experience because it's not providing a prep time. Is that correct?
It is not providing prep.
So the STEM teacher who's non-certified can go into the classroom and teach STEM.
If you have as Dr. Van Zyl said, if you have a certified person in the classroom.
And you would, if you had,
Yeah.
you'd have a kindergarten teacher, and so I'm not sure the certification is that big of an issue, if I'm correct.
No, I don't think that. I guess I'm not understanding your question because part of the reason, from my understanding again, is that again during budget reductions, the music was added in to help cover prep periods, and so when those music classes were doubled up, that is a prep coverage. So
That's what I thought.
So I think what you're saying may be the opposite of what is really taking place, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly.
Maybe I'm not understanding your question, Director Lind.
Somewhere in some email or somebody in a phone call or whatever it was said that the STEM that the STEM would not be a prep for the kindergarten teachers. And so I thought that would solve the problem. But my question then is, you're taking away a prep time, which is music.
So they would be required then to
Yeah.
be prep coverage.
So that
what we would
information is wrong.
what we would look at, yeah, I'd have to see that information.
Yeah.
That's
I'd
why
see
they
if I
would
can
have to
dig it
be
up.
certified in that area. And I think the other component that the elementary principals wrote to you about in regard to that was the exposure to more learning opportunities for your kindergarten students as compared to music, because we do have a great staff that incorporate singing in other areas, not just the music class. That's how a lot of our kids learn at a young age, is through singing and incorporating that, because a lot of our, having been to some of our classes and walked through, they're singing songs about the calendar and is it sunny or is it raining? So, they are doing some other type of singing outside of that, but the opportunity to have another learning experience through STEM is not there for all of our kids right now. It may be in pieces here and there. So that's why their recommendation to you from the elementary side of things is to incorporate that so that all the kids K through 5 have that STEM experience.
And we're sure that their proposal does not include another way of providing prep time so that can happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be in violation of contract, and that would not go over well.
that they would get their
they've
prep
looked
in
at that.
another way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
They
saying.
would need to get their prep in another way, which
Yeah.
is what he's stating.
Yes,
That's what I'm
because the proposal, the overarching proposal is that we move from 1 to 5, first grade through fifth grade STEM, to K to 5 STEM, to provide consistency. What that means is at kindergarten, they are receiving 100 minutes of music. So basically, they get 2 dips of music, whereas the other grades get 1. So it would be a reduction of that 1 period of music at K and a replacement of that with the STEM course. That was the proposal.
Got it.
And the impact then would be on a reduction related to the music staff, because they would be teaching 1 less course at the kindergarten level.
Right, so the
would be-
question that I asked in relation to that was, how does this impact the music program throughout the elementary? Because we had received communication from the music teacher saying that this reduction caused them to travel between buildings, and then it would eliminate the elementary music programs. And that, to me, is a big deal. I mean, I think parents appreciate the music programs. The kids, it gives them a different experience. So that's the question that I'm still trying to, do you have any information on that?
My
Or
question would be, why would you eliminate them?
what was presented was that the traveling between buildings made it difficult for them to plan for the music concerts because it took away part of their time. That's what I'm looking for clarification on.
Certainly. So I can't speak directly to the staffing part of that, so I don't have a good sense of who would be traveling or how many people would be traveling. So that would be something, that would be a piece of information we'd have to get to you from the Human Resources Department.
Okay.
What I can say is that it really, the reduction is 1 class period once a week times the number of kindergarten sections in a building.
Right. And I do know that whole formula with the music teachers is very complicated, so I don't pretend to understand it. So that was where I was asking for clarity.
I think the other component that I've heard is it's inconsistent across elementaries now
Right.
on who does programs anyhow.
Yep.
So I think this would be able to be worked through to be able to say, how do you offer that? Having been an elementary principal, sometimes my folks would do a during the day concert. Sometimes my folks would do an after lunch concert. Sometimes they would do an evening concert depending on what, and they would rotate it through different grade levels. So not every grade level has to do the exact same thing, but I think that to provide consistency can be done with the planning of the music staff and the building principals to be able to make that work out. Because I don't think, again, the music program is great to be able to have your kids stand up in front and sing, but there's a whole lot more to teaching goes on in the classroom on a daily basis than just necessarily standing up on a stage a couple of times a year. So our folks do a fantastic job of that. I don't think it would be lost. I think it would actually maybe allow them to sit down and have the conversation of how do you provide some consistency, because my understanding is each building does something a little bit different when it comes to the music program, and this is something that's been talked about for multiple years and they haven't come to some agreement on.
Director Lind?
That was the point I was going to make. There are some grade levels in some buildings that do have concerts. There's some that don't. that is not a contractual thing. It's just that the music teachers want to do it.
Right, and I would add to that the music staff, as they've been going through their own sort of review and evaluation and curriculum process, they've been working with Sandy Georgie, our director of elementary teaching and learning, and they've really been working towards more consistency around that, so that across the system, it's clear if you're in third grade that this is the experience you might have. I would say, again, as with any cut, there are impacts there, but certainly we would be able to work with the teachers in order to figure out how we can become maybe a little more consistent. And I think being more consistent also can provide some more additional support. So it's everything from planning the day and preparing for the day and getting the risers and having the music and all of those pieces that, do take time. I think that we would certainly continue our work with them to try to help support them. It won't be a perfect situation, but as Dr. Van Zyl said, I think that they were already on that track to sort of coming to some agreement around consistency across the system with that.
Director Thompson?
Yeah, can you again clarify for me just the history? We had 2 music classes because one was for regular music, but because there was another program to be offered, music was offered again so that the teachers have time for prep for the kindergarten grade. Okay.
Correct.
And when did that get implemented?
Oh boy, you're testing my memory.
So it's been around for a while.
It's been a while.
Okay.
It was a direct result of some cuts that happened quite a number of years ago. In that we lost some teachers and opportunities, and our learning specialists, for example, went half-time, and they were doing some work directly in the classroom. So in order to make the schedule work, we had to have an opportunity. We had to have somewhere for kids to go, so that we could honor the prep requirement in the contract. So you're correct in what you're stating there.
So technically, they probably shouldn't have had to in the first place. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I think it was a creative solution to provide students with an opportunity when we had like a sort of a complex puzzle to put together related to some reductions that we made. So I wouldn't say that they shouldn't have. I think it was an opportunity for them to be able to engage in a music experience. And we know, the arts and music are really important at all grades.
And we also had the switch from half-day to all-day kindergarten in
That's
that too,
correct.
So
We had a lot of change over that period of time, and so that was just the way that it worked out in the end in order to make the schedule work.
So not being here to say whether it's right or wrong, but again, having been an elementary principal, that consistency across grade levels I think is important. So I think it was an end to a means to be able to solve a budget issue, but I think if they had the dollars, they probably would have been trying to take a look at how do we provide the consistency, whether it was STEM or something else in the grade level, to be able to provide that opportunity. So they used the resources they had to be as fiscally, I think, responsible as they could at that particular time.
Yep. Thank you.
Director Thompson?
So can you walk me through this math of $112,000 savings? Because if you're taking one music class off, but adding one STEM class on, I'm not understanding how do you get the $112,000 savings?
So the reduction in the music area is 1.4 FTE. With our STEM specialists, so when our STEM specialists were initially hired, they were hired at an FTE rate based on the number of classes that they would be teaching during the day. It's sort of how we do our high school staffing as well. So for example, in smaller buildings, you had a STEM specialist that was hired, and I'm just going to throw out a number, but say a 0.65, and then at a larger building, you would have a full-time STEM specialist. So a couple of years ago, in our conversations with the building principals and the director of teaching and learning and the coordinators, a decision was made to elevate the STEM specialists all to 1.0 across the system. So it wasn't just based on number of courses that they were teaching. It was streamlined so that every building got a 1.0 position. So when that happened, then the STEM teachers there were additional duties added to their job during that indirect time, so that time when they weren't actually in classrooms. And so because of that, they have space in their day to actually be teaching more STEM, direct instruction, without adding more significant cost to that. So what we have is we have a reduction in the music, but we're not adding because we already did the add a couple of years ago in the STEM area.
So we are maximizing our resource skill set. And
Right, they would be
they're just
doing more.
underutilized right now.
Yes, apologies for interrupting. They would do more direct, because they would have more classes, so they would do more direct instruction.
But again, just from an FTE point of view, we've got 4 that are not certified for kindergarten, and then 4 that are.
Correct.
Got it. And so, can you walk me through then, back to Director Baker's comment about music teachers having to drive back and forth and what that logistics are? Would one music teacher be assigned to 2 schools, and is that why they have to drive? Or I guess I'm not understanding that.
You know, I would really want to rely on the Human Resources Department as they put that puzzle together in terms of staffing and what that looks like. I don't have those numbers in front of me in terms of what that looks like from building to building and how many teachers would be traveling, et cetera. But we certainly can get that
Lind.
number from you.
Sorry.
For you.
That commonly happens when you have one person that needs a FTE and they don't have it. For example, our adaptive 5 people, or maybe 2/10 here because that's where the need is, 3/10 there, because there's no full-time adaptive people in a building. There just isn't. So a lot of positions work that way, where you have to travel between buildings to give them a full-time position. And even in, I'm thinking of other areas, our psychologists travel, we even have, you have adaptive, and sometimes you Phi Ed. For example, if a building has the numbers that you need 1.5 Phi Ed teachers, well, you've got the full-time Phi Ed, then you've got the other half-time that has to come in. So it's a puzzle that the principals have to work out, and they have to work it collaboratively to make it work. So it's not uncommon.
I would add, too, that although I can't speak to the specifics of this situation, I know that the HR department really tries to minimize that where they can. So, anytime we can place somebody in one building, certainly that's the goal. And then if there is traveling, to minimize the number of buildings or the proximity of the buildings and those types of things for our teachers.
Okay. Is there any more questions by the board? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the kindergarten STEM adjustment?
Is that what it was?
That,
No, we haven't.
I know, I'm asking for if there is a motion to approve the kindergarten STEM adjustment.
I'll make a motion.
All right, so we have a motion by Director Kelleher. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Director Lind. Any further questions or discussions by the board? Director Thompson?
Yeah, when I look at the numbers, well, it makes sense. I mean, if you've got 8 resources or however many that are in STEM that are not underutilized and can be utilized to offset prep time for kindergarten, that does make sense. People side-wise, we are displacing 4 or reduction of 4, plus the music teacher is 1.4. I'm torn because I understand the financial side, but I'd like to know more from the teachers, the parents. I mean, there's value in what's going on in kindergarten, and I also think there's value in the additional learning opportunities beyond music. I don't know. I'll pause here and get some thoughts from others.
Director Shinley?
I think having that opportunity of having STEM on a cycle. I think it would be a really good thing for kindergarten. They are getting a music right now, and yes, they are doing that in the classroom as well. It's not the same. What they're doing in the classroom is not the same as what they would go to for a music class. But I think just having that extra enrichment of STEM, I think that would be a good opportunity for them.
Any further discussion?
I would just be repeating what I said in the last proposal, that I know our elementary teachers or elementary principals put this together, and they say it'll work, they say it'll be fine, and I trust them.
Director Kelleher?
So just reading from the letter that all the principals, all the elementary principals sent us, as building administrators, we are educated professionals with decades of experience working with our young, eager students that show up every day ready to learn and do their best. We have developed relationships with our students and families that spanned over a 6-year elementary experience. Through these relationships, we deeply understand the needs of our students, families, and staff, and we've worked to develop budget reductions that have the least impact on the elementary learning experience. And this is their recommendation, so I support that, and I do believe that they have a pulse on what their families and their kids want.
Okay. Any further discussion? Director Thompson?
I think the only concern that I have is that we've got 50% of our STEM professionals that know our schools, know our students, know what's going on in there from first grade to 5, and we've got a certification that they may or may not need to be able to teach kindergarten, which is roughly $700, 6 to 8 week course. With the assumption, I don't know if they want to do that or not. I think that's where the hang up is. Like, is there? I don't know. There's a lot of intellectual capital we could be losing.
If that's a question, I think, and I don't want to put words into your mouth. Again, if they're certified in other areas and they're tenured teachers, we're not going to lose them. They're going to go into an area that they're certified to be able to teach. And I'm going to guess, like most of our teachers do, is that they could be collaborative with whoever maybe gets that position and share some of their knowledge along the way, because that's what our staff members do. They talk about the good things that they do from one classroom to the other. So if they're able to be, if they choose to go get certified, then they definitely have the opportunity to be a component of it. If they don't and they say they're certified to teach at the elementary level, we're probably not losing them because they're tenured folks. And then they have the knowledge to be able to pass on to somebody who may be coming into that position and share that expertise, which is kind of the trainer of trainer models. You got people who have been trained, they could train the other people to take it over. So I think that could be, not that it's not an issue, but I think it could be something that's resolved and it's in that process.
Any further discussion? So we have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? No. Motion carries 6-1. That would be me.
You have 3 other items if you want to discuss any of those.
I just didn't get my questions answered. All right, so we have 3 items up there. Is there something that the board would like to discuss? Director Kelleher?
I'd like to discuss the technology restructure.
Okay.
With that, in regards to the letter that came from the elementary principals, they are also saying, in addition, they recommend that we approve this technology support consolidation plan. It better aligns their limited resources for allocating digital learning support by student enrollment, similar to other budget adjustment proposals. And it also provides the technology support staff for the one-to-one iPad program. And they recognize that it's a loss, but it insulates the elementary classrooms from further reductions. So they do support that, and this recommendation, it just addresses the certification issue, and it also maintains the commitment that we made to the levy, to the community with the 2019 levy.
Any questions from board members on this item? Director Lind?
I don't have a question. I was wondering if, Brian, you've got your answer that you asked last night regarding costs or whatever, how much it would,
I didn't get that answer yet.
what did you ask for?
No, I asked for the budget range for a tech staff versus
Okay.
a non.
Thank you for that question. So I can give you a general response to that. Currently, we have 14 DLSs and we have 14 level 1 techs that serve all of our buildings across the district. The total budget impact for 14 digital learning specialists is just over $1.8 million for those 14 staff members. That includes their benefits. For our level 1 techs, for those 14 positions, we spend just over $900,000 for those 14 positions, including benefits.
Thank you.
Any further questions by the board? Director Thompson?
And I haven't, I don't know if I got this in the emails or not, but I'm looking to better understand the volume of tech support that's usually done, and if that is, 1,000 tickets, is it, I don't know.
13,000.
13,000.
As of last Friday, it was 13,000, and so we're 3/4 of the way through the year.
And again, there's probably a lot of tickets that aren't entered in addition to the 13,000.
Absolutely, yeah.
So-
If somebody says, hey, my computer's not working, they see somebody walking by, they'll try to grab them and help them out if they can.
So I would assume that we hired 14 level 1 techs for a reason, so that we could offload some of the technology issues, the upgrades, and the tech support that needs to be done. And discontinuing that would then, the tickets would have to be absorbed by somebody else. And so when you look at that somebody else, then when you look at the financials, are you underutilizing a resource to resolve technical issues versus keeping technical resource in there? I don't know. I think I've got to think through this more, I think, and I'm not sure yet.
Was that a
No.
question? Were you just thinking out loud,
I
or was
think
that
I
a
was
question?
thinking out loud. I
Okay.
apologize.
He was just making a statement.
I'm making a statement that the statement is if you discontinue, if you have a reduction in tech staff only, you've got resources that may not be fully utilized because they're doing tech related items. And then if we've got 14 technical resources right now, they were hired for a reason, you can have probably roughly 18,000 tickets ideally, targeting to the end of June, potentially, maybe 16. But that work's got to get absorbed by somebody.
Dr. Van Zyl?
And I think and if Emily wants to speak to this too, or she can, I know Tracy spoke to it the other night. It's similar to what they're trying to do across the district, is have a formula in place so that there's consistency on each position serving a certain number of kids. And because it's inconsistent right now, you may have somebody who's doing 1,000 kids, you may have somebody else who's doing 400 kids. So they're trying to put that consistency in place, I think, to address the financial need, but also not to, I think the point, and again, I'm not trying to put words into your mouth, to underutilize or overutilize somebody. I think they're trying to find that compromise in between to be able to say, is there a balance in how we run this so that we're not overutilizing or underutilizing somebody in this process? And I think that's what Tracy and the folks took a look at, to be able to say, how do we still do the things that we need to do? Because if you get rid of all your tech folks and 13,000 tickets now go to your DLS folks, I think what you're saying, or what I heard you say, was then you're paying somebody substantially more to manage something that you could have paid somebody substantially less
Yes.
to manage. And so I think that's the formula that they're trying to find, that common ground of how do we give equity to the staff so that they're functioning with the same number of kids and students and buildings as best they can to make that still work.
Director Kelleher?
And Brian, I think the other thing that you talked about last night was moving forward with doing what we need to do to get the 6 we have that are certified are the ones that are going to remain are certified, and then hiring 6 more that are certified. But you know, that is something that's potential, like next year down the road type of scenario. This addresses the certification issue. It addresses the recommendation that our tech staff is making that's going to be needed to support district-wide. I believe it holds true to the levy, but then this might not be or could not necessarily have to be the end of what structuring that group looks like for educational and learning support in the classroom, as well as additional tech support for an upcoming school year or the next school year. So I think those are things that could be out there, but this addresses what we need to do with the certification, but it also then addresses the budget issue for us in this next year.
Director Shinley?
So I just want to clarify. So the opportunity to hire as we go, as to make sure we're making sure the teachers get their needs, the students are getting their needs. I think that's my biggest holdup, is making sure that they are going to be supported in the classroom, especially when, you know, things happen with their, you know, equipment when they're teaching. But that would be something that is going to be looked at consistently to make sure that we're supported. Clarifying with Judy, but for Emily.
Certainly, thank you for that. Just one point of clarification. When I was referencing the dollar amount, I said 14 DLSs. We actually have 2 separate titles in the district, so our elementaries are referred to DLSs. They have the DLS title. Our secondary have media specialist license, but that they're all included, so they're referred to as media specialists. So I just want to make that clarification that we don't have 14 people titled in the district with DLS. So this is really focused on the elementary in terms of what the reduction would be. So I just want to make sure that that was clear. In response to your question, yes, so one of the RFIs from Director Thompson last night was to look into sort of what can we live with and just sort of barely scrape by in terms of technology, which of course is not a place we want to be, but given our cuts, we are willing to explore anything. There were some conversations today with the elementary and secondary principals, with our tech director, Tracy Brovold, to ask that question. And I'm sure it won't be much of a surprise, but our high school administrator said that they actually need more tech support in their building, that what they have now is just barely enough to get by when you're talking about 1,800 students and then all of the staff. The middle school was more in the middle of the road. Of course, they wouldn't want to make a cut, but they're willing to contribute if need be. And the elementary, you know, we're sort of in the same place. So the proposal that is on the table that came from the district that was presented by Director Brovold, really what it does is it takes the resources that we have and tries to get them to be equal across the system, as well as have a reduction. So the numbers, so instead of having one media specialist for 1,800 students, we'd have one for 1,800 students, but then we would have others that would be servicing similar numbers of students across the system. So I think I mentioned last night that for example, we have a full-time DLS in our smallest building, and we have a full-time media specialist in our largest building. So there certainly is an inequity there that would be rectified by this proposal. Again, it would be better if we could add more to the buildings that have higher and greater need, but that's not our situation right now. So did that answer your question? I mean, I think as we go through this process, should we move forward, you know, we are always looking to reevaluate where we are and what we're doing to make sure that we're best meeting the needs of kids and teachers and staff, given the resources that we have. We know that there will be a reduction in service when you reduce positions and you reduce availability and access, so we recognize that. So it's really how do we best manage in that situation and make sure that we provide the best service equally across the district as we can.
Director Lind?
I'm very pleased to hear that you would be continually to evaluate and move and adjust with these people to meet the needs in the buildings. I think that makes me feel more comfortable. Thank you.
Director Carly Anderson?
Yeah, this is one that it does feel terrible to cut, but I feel like it's easier to adjust as needed going forward should we see that this is not enough, and should we have additional money to bring people back in. So I appreciate this.
Director Thompson?
Yeah, can you walk me through the, I think we have 6 individuals that are not certified. Is that what I understood?
That's correct.
Okay. So similar to the STEM situation, so we've got 6 individuals that are not DLS certified. And at the end of this school year, then you guys are going to repost or whatever maybe. And
Right, so if we were to retain the 14 positions, what we would be required to do is to place the DLSs that do not have the the state requires media specialist license. So those DLS positions, so if we did not make a cut, so we retained all 14, 6 of those currently in those positions that do not have a media specialist license would be placed in their licensure area. So whatever that is, if it's an elementary license or whatever that might be. So they would be placed, and then we are required by the state then, and Sarah came, she heard me talking earlier, so she came from home to support. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
So she can pop up and correct me at any time that I make a mistake. But so we're required by the state then to post that position for a specific number of days to try to get a licensed person into that position. As Dr. Van Zyl mentioned earlier, they did note that we were out of compliance this year, but Sarah and her team worked really diligently to get an out-of-field placement so that we are okay for this year. But they made it very clear that we are expected to follow the proper process in terms of posting and trying to hire a licensed person for that position before we do anything else.
Director Lind?
With these budget cuts, that's kind of a moot question, right? Because all the people that are not certified won't be there anyway.
Correct. So under this particular proposal, the people that would be retained are those that have the proper license, and those that don't would be placed into another whatever their licensure area was. So yes, that would only. That scenario, well, the outcome is the same either scenario, so we'd have to follow that process for those that aren't licensed. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the technology support consolidation? I'm sorry, my eyes are old.
Consolidation.
Thank you. Thank you. It's late. Yes. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion by Director Lind. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Director Carly Anderson. Any further discussion or questions? Director Thompson?
So while I appreciate the 4 techs that are going to be discontinued, I'm just wondering if the administration and the team need 14, and again, keep in mind, you've got four techs, the work's got to get absorbed somewhere afterwards, and if there's a $65,000 average salary for that, you're looking at, I don't know, $250-ish or so. I'd like to just discuss, a $250,000 savings to make sure that, there's a cost of to run a school or to run a business. I would assume there's just a cost of running a business. And so when you have a tech department, that's just part of what it costs to run the business. And so if you scale that back, then it's got to get absorbed somewhere else. It has a trickle effect, I would assume, to the classrooms, the teachers, whoever else can provide support. I don't know. I'm considering entertaining a motion for keeping the 4 techs, which would reduce the number of savings, but gives stability in regards to any potential overage or concerns that I don't know. That's what I'm thinking out loud.
We have a motion.
We do. So we currently have a motion and a second on the table. So I think we need to have that vote first before we would entertain another motion.
No, I think mine would be an amendment to that motion.
You want to amend the motion?
If there's others on the board that feel that would warrant it.
I guess I would probably echo a little bit of what Emily said, is that if you make this reduction and we see that it's struggling, I think it's easier, and I think Carly mentioned it as well, it's probably easier to bring that position back if we start struggling. Because there's some thing, I'm not a techie person, but there's a lot of neat stuff that you can do. You can log on from one location and get into somebody's device in another location and try to fix their problem. So it probably, we have to make sure we're utilizing those things to its fullest advantage as well. So I think that if you go with what the current motion is, that can be addressed by knowing that we're going to continue to evaluate that process. If it doesn't, then we can come back and I don't know if I can answer a question, then I would try to answer that question.
Okay. Do you want to withdraw your amendment?
Yes, I'd like to withdraw my amendment.
All right, thank you. All right, so we have motion, a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, let's put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No.
All right, so the motion carries. We have 2 noes, which would be Director Thompson and Director David Anderson.
So you have 2 items left, the ALC and the 260 LEAF folks, if you want to discuss either of those.
Director Kelleher?
I know I mentioned that I wanted to talk about all 5 of them, but this one we already discussed, and you're moving forward the discussions with. So from my request, I withdraw
To get
that.
more information.
The only thing I would tell you is I will have a letter. I will have a letter from the mayor tomorrow, saying that the city is willing to purchase that facility, and so that's what they're. Justin's out of town right now, so I did reach out to them, and that's what they were able to give me.
Okay, I just
quickly.
wanted, okay, then I would like to discuss it if you've had that contact. I wasn't sure, because I know Justin was out of town, so I wasn't sure if you connected. So, thank you. Because I do think this is an absolute viable solution for this, and I can't, I'm not going to reiterate what I said last night, but this is a win-win-win-win. And maybe another win for all the parties involved. And I think that if we do that, then we can also start reinvesting that, get going with the sale, get going with the cost of construction, and turn that around and use it for curriculum, some curriculum spend and other capital needs. So I don't know. I would really like to move forward with this, and I'd like to make a motion that we relocate the ALC to KTMS.
Okay.
And maybe just say pending the negotiations.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table currently for the relocation of the ALC pending the negotiations to sell that building. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'm I'm going to second it because I want to hear the discussion.
Okay, second by Director Lind. We will open the floor up for discussion on this item. Any questions from the board? Director Thompson?
I think my position is I'm not in favor of this because of growth potentials. We've got 150 kids or 150 students that have capacity in Kenwood. We've got 150, I think it's in either McGuire or Century, one of the two. And then when you look at the elementary numbers, you've got about 600 students that has grown since 2018 to now. And those 600 students are coming into our middle schools no matter what. And so for me, while I understand and appreciate the desire to sell this location, it doesn't give us flexibility in the next 2 to 3 years. And for those in the community that may or may not know, the parking lot is actually owned by the city. Okay, and so it just minimizes the district's flexibility for whatever actions that we may or may not need to take. By moving the ALC, I think that it just kind of puts us in a position where we're limited with space potentially. We're limited to growth in the next 2 years. I think we got to just look a little bit further down the path on what are we exactly doing. So I think what I'd like to do is probably table this for a little bit longer and then come back to it.
Director Lind?
I thought in one of our discussions that we were given projections saying that Kenwood would be able to handle, Kenwood would be able to handle the 80 students that would be going into that section in the near future, up to even a projected middle school build or additions onto the existing schools, whatever is decided. So I didn't think space was going to be an issue because of their low population now compared with the other middle schools, and they're a bigger building too. So,
Director Kelleher?
Yeah, I believe you're right, Director Lind, because the discussion we had was, I thought the projections for the middle school that we were showing was 3 and 4 years out, correct?
Yes, that is correct. And excuse me, at this point in time, too, Kenwood Trail is our lowest population when it comes to the middle schools. There are 150 less.
But the
than
population
middle school.
crunch for the middle school was, I think, 4 years
4
out.
years out, yep.
4 years out. And so that's why the discussion with the long-term plan is to include the additional structures, whether the lease on this place is up and we have a district office, the learning center, and we have land that we own that could be built on. So that ties the long-term discussion that addresses that crowd crunch that you're talking about, Brian, would be in those facility discussions that we have, and incorporate that into that transition to give them a permanent home when that space is needed, and then that space will be done and will have been invested in.
Director Carly Anderson?
So one of the things I've just been kind of reading in our email is just maybe some of our Kenwood folks feeling like they haven't had an opportunity to really talk to our administration or kind of share their ideas. And so I think we've heard good information about how this could benefit the ELC students. I think some people feel mixed about that, but I would just want to create some space for our leaders to connect with Kenwood teachers as well as the parents, just to know that that voice is also represented. So this one for me is, I understand the urgency from a want to get going on the building, but this one has less impact on staff and other kinds of things that we've been discussing, where I feel like we could create a little bit of space, maybe table this until the 11th, maybe later if we want to create some space for conversation.
Dr. Van Zyl?
To kind of go with that, yeah, this one doesn't, as you said, impact staffing but it does have, I think John and Bill shared with you, there is a timeline to it. So there is a little bit of play with this one because it's not contingent on HR having to move people around in regard to that. But the other issue to that is it does have a pretty good price tag to it, that if it doesn't go through, then you're back dealing with something that probably will impact staff. So you're absolutely right. But if it doesn't go through, it probably dominoes into something that could impact staff.
Sure.
So
Kim?
considering the question on that you mentioned with the middle school enrollment numbers, when would the boundary redraw happen with the new elementary school? Because that would impact the enrollment numbers for Kenwood Trail, correct?
Basically what you do is 6 months out from a school opening is normally when you have your boundaries established. And so that would be a component of next fall levy passing. Do you get the money to be able to open that elementary school, redraw the boundaries? And so 6 months out, if you're able to, you're normally hiring your administrator. They're starting to organize the staff. And then so the boundaries with elementary and middle school would probably be done at that time. So it's a conversation in the fall, approval right after Christmas or early of January of next year so that people know where those boundaries are. Is that what you were asking?
Correct, because I'm still thinking about the space confinements there and then how we would adjust those boundaries moving forward anyway. So technically, if we're thinking about we have a new elementary school that's going to be opening, those boundaries would be adjusted before the opening of that school. So the enrollment in Kenwood would potentially rise based on those adjustments. So that it was equal across the three buildings.
Yeah, I think you take that into account when you do the boundaries. The other thing that Bill and I have also talked about is just so, and maybe you have this awareness or maybe you don't. If you don't, we're making you aware of it. Right now, there's about $50 million in bonding capacity that the district has. That would be at a no tax increase. But you just have to know that has to be part of the long-term plan discussion. So there's about $50 million if you're talking about middle school bubbles or issues that could be utilized at some point if the community feels the need for space and they pass that, which would be a no tax increase to them. It will grow. It's $50 million a couple months ago, so it'll be more significant than that by the time it would be something that a community would vote on. So just for your awareness, so that you know that there is conversation about long-range plan and some dollars that could impact the middle school structure as well.
Okay. Director Kelleher?
So the other piece to this is this may not directly seem to impact teaching, but it does because that's got, the $117,000 worth of utilities, maintenance, custodial is all fund balance costs, operating costs. So that can help fill whatever we haven't done yet. And then Dr. Van Zyl, the $450 for the curriculum purchases. So if we aren't selling this land and not have that $450,000 available through the capital fund, do we not get updated curriculum, or how will that be paid for?
I'll let Bill chime in first.
That's true. If we don't make this adjustment here, we have to find this amount somewhere else.
Yep.
And so really what you're doing is the curriculum amount normally gets funded out of the general fund. So this would offset that. And so you'd be able to have a cushion. And what we're recommending is that if this does sell or this plan goes forward, you hold enough back that you have at least 2 years to be able to offset that dollar amount. So it's not a one-year expenditure in the curricular area. And I think you all have heard me say this before. We're underfunded in our curricular area anyway because we don't have enough money sometimes set in the budget to be able to even purchase a full rendition of math books. You got math books that are 15 to 30 years old.
So I do see this has an impact on
there's some
on the
things that have to be
classroom.
done. So
Yep.
that's a whole other conversation, but it does have an impact on the financial situation.
And on the
Again, this
classroom.
was something that we brought because we saw it as a revenue generator rather than a reduction in there. But if it doesn't go through it would be at some point coming up with these dollars to offset it in some way, shape, or form.
Director Lind?
Yeah, I think we ought to realize too that we aren't losing staff with this proposal, but if we don't accept this proposal, we have $567,000 of 80% at least will have to be staff. This helps reduce any pressure on our staff cuts.
Can I ask specifically what curriculum is being purchased with this money?
There's a long list of different curriculums that are being purchased with this money, but I can't give you the particulars without going and getting the plan. Yeah, Emily probably has a lot better idea than I do. I just know how much it costs.
Don't go far then.
So there's not a particular curriculum. These dollars really do go to support the. Let me back up. Nothing's been decided in terms of what the curriculum will be for the areas that are currently in curriculum review.
Okay.
So we are in the process, right, with our teachers. It's a very robust process. We dig into the standards. We identify priority standards in some cases. We do all of that work first, and then once we determine what the state is requiring of us and how we need to approach that best here in Lakeville, then we have a very lengthy process to identify, evaluate, and then select a resource. So these dollars are based on our estimates on what it would cost, and this is only part of it. This is only a portion of what it costs to resource a particular area. So it would offset some of those costs. So once we get to the point of purchase and we've made those decisions, then those dollars would be available as part of the larger teaching and learning budget to resource our teachers.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Kim? So it's not a particular, it's not a pre-identified item. It's that we are going through this process, and at the end, we know we are going to have to purchase something in order to support the curricular areas that are in review. So we're in review for science right now. That's a big one. That's generally one of your more expensive areas, just because of all the resources that you have to have along with the more traditional sort of online and paper materials that you need. You also need other things for labs and those types of things. So that's part of what would be earmarked for those purchases.
Okay. And would those purchases then, as far as like our general budget is concerned, be categorized under instructional support services?
They'd be instructional resources, so they come out of the general fund. They're allocated to the teaching and learning budget, so we allocate to elementary and secondary. So the directors each year do a budget based on the sort of their projections related to the specific content area and the research they've done on what they anticipate the cost would be to resource whatever grade level or particular course. And then that happens with Bill and his team, and then from there, those dollars then come from the teaching and learning, where the money's allocated to teaching and learning under instructional resources. Okay. Did I say that accurately, Bill?
Yeah. Okay. They have a relatively large budget.
Well, and I appreciate you taking the time to answer those questions.
Course.
I'm just trying to address the questions that were brought forth through email from the community members and staff. Some of those related to curriculum, specifically like the different programs that we have that are subscriptions, and if some of those could be reduced and made into one so that we didn't have so many different ones. But again, that's not my area, that's your area, so I would assume that you could speak to that.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anything else I can answer for you?
No, I don't think so on that.
Thank you so much.
Any further discussion around this? Director Thompson?
I don't think I'm in favor with it yet. I think we're making progress to learn more. I'm not sure if Kenwood parents should have. I don't know if they've had a chance to say more or not. I'd love to. When we're building a new elementary building, sometimes we get a proposal, we've got plans, and we kind of went through that a couple weeks back or so. I feel like with this one can wait until April 11th. So I would vote no.
Director Lind?
Could I, maybe I didn't hear it, what's specific reason that you want to wait?
I think there's a variety of reasons. I think with we don't know what we're going to get from the city in regards to price.
Oh.
We don't know. We don't have. While we have an agreement where we would want to have a conversation with them, I get that. I just feel like more stakeholder input ought to be needed if we're going to make this move. And I would like for us to wait and make a decision at our next board meeting. That's all.
I do also have some questions that were raised by PE teachers stating that the concern with the constraint of the locker rooms and that not allowing them to have room for students. There was also some questions raised about just in general how this impacts the programming at Kenwood Trail by the educators as well. I just don't, I guess I don't know how this has been portrayed to staff. Director Lind?
I thought it was the principal to send us regarding, I was concerned about locker rooms too. I thought we had an answer to that.
I haven't had a chance to read that yet. I've stated that a few times that I wanted to meet with the middle school principals that offered that.
There were two things I think that you asked about. Number one, the locker room space. I think John addressed that the other night, is that the spaces are large enough they'd have to add some lockers in the hallway where kids would be able to put their locker, get their stuff out of their locker, go into the locker room and be able to change. As far as impacting the structure down there right now, I believe John and Kelly both said the majority of that space is storage in those areas, so there's not necessarily being utilized in a very good chunk of that space. So I don't know that it impacts other than the conversation that with the PE people that may be using locker rooms. And so that's what I had understood had been shared. So.
Yeah,
Director Lind?
I have a suggestion that the principal talk to the staff to have the concerns regarding that, because I'm not sure they're all connecting.
Yeah, that would be my question too.
Yep.
Director Kelleher?
So I know that the night we discussed this, when the principals were here, Kenwood's principal did address the lockers in the classroom space for us, and that it's being used to store furniture in right now. And and then my motion was to accept the relocation of the ALC pending negotiations. So we don't know what we're going to get, and the negotiations will be taking place and will have to be voted on. But my motion is pending that negotiations.
Dr. Anzal?
And the principal from the school just sent me a message and says, I've met with all my staff and talked about the ALC and shared the plan.
Yep. So
Any further discussion? Okay, so we have a motion on the table and a second. We've had discussion, and I hear no further questions, so we can put this to a vote. The motion is for, just to review, relocation of the ALC pending the contract negotiations that are taking place for the purchase. Director Carly Anderson?
So we have, I just want to be clear.
Yep.
So in this vote, I mean, we're putting this to vote, yay or nay? Like, or can we have a different motion? We can't have another motion.
well, you can amend
What would
it.
be your,
Since you have a motion and a second, I think you
Vote
have
on
to
that
see if the
first.
person's willing to rescind or amend their motion.
what would be your
Or you
question?
can offer an amendment to my
I
motion.
think my amendment might be, I don't necessarily know the support is here, and so I don't want this proposal to go down. So I would rather table this until the 11th and allow for people to, for instance, Principal McDermott offered to show people the area tomorrow. There are other things that I think could happen to get more people potentially on board, allow for more feedback, discussions. So I guess what I'm saying is I worry that if we push it to vote right now, I'd rather table it.
Can I ask a clarifying question of Bill? So when you visited with John, and I think the question was asked to them, how far out does it take for construction? I think that maybe plays a little bit into what Director Anderson is visiting. Has he given you any more? I think he answered it, but have we found out any more specifics on that?
There's really two pieces we're concerned about on timeline. Number one is the flooring that has to be put in. We have at least a 12 to 14-week wait on that. The other is the mini split or the air conditioning that needs to go into that area. Again, a very long lead time. So we need, if we wait too much longer, we won't have it ready for September. We just can't.
Do we have a projected date? Oh, excuse me.
No, that's fine. It's okay.
We are
We're all
asking for
getting tired.
quotes right now, but we haven't received them yet. So I can't give you a date right today.
So I guess I would add this, if it waits much longer, that could be part of probably the conversation or negotiation in regard to the contract, the sale of it, and then the turnover of it probably doesn't have to be, I'm sure that's something we could, is that something that can be discussed as far as, hey, we sell it to you, we're not going to be in the new facility until September, can we keep the building?
I think we could look at a mid-year changeover.
Because I think that's part of what you're asking through that. And again, I'm not trying to put words into your mouth, but I think that's kind of where you were going with part of the reason to hold on. So, but I didn't want to have us wait too long so that we got to the point. But I think there is if that is an issue, I think there's an option that we could discuss in regard to that.
Yep.
Director Kelleher?
When are the best times to go out to bid for all of this kind of work?
Probably a couple of months ago.
And
But, I mean, that's the way construction's been over the last couple of years,
Yeah.
since COVID. It's been very difficult to get supplies and to get orders, because everybody's back in building whatever they're doing. And there's great demand, so that's why we're seeing long lead times.
So
on our
my,
stuff.
my recommendation with the motion that I made pending negotiations is because then when we get together on the 11th, hopefully we would have something there that we could discuss and move forward at that time with the decision, a final decision based on what those negotiations could be.
And just for clarification, I think what you're saying, similar to I think what Director Thompson asked last night, depending on the negotiations, you still would have to approve the sale.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think what you're saying is get everything going. The motion, how I interpret it, big picture, is get everything going.
Yep.
Get the negotiations, have it ready to bring back to us
Yep.
if we have a final bill of sale, so to speak, because you technically still have to approve the sale of the building anyhow. You approved to go into negotiations, to have conversations, to get some data from them to be able to say, are they interested in doing it? We haven't gotten a final agreement because the city council hasn't voted on anything. They have to do that whole process as well. So, because I think Brian asked that question last night, is would we still have to approve the sale of the bill? Until I give you the number, it was either you or Brian, I don't know what, until I give you the number of what is agreed upon, you can't agree to the sale
And
price.
that's why with the pending the negotiations, because we have to vote on that. So that's,
That makes it more clear to me.
yep, yep.
Director Carly Anderson?
I don't know if it's clear to me. So what I would like to see is, again, kind of what we would actually get for it. It would be nice to know what the bids are, to kind of have all of that information presented to us. And so to me, I would be fine with those things moving forward and getting that information on the 11th. So if that's what you're proposing.
That's what it is, pending negotiations, and yes, that's exactly what it is.
Pending negotiations and bids is probably what numbers?
Yeah, well, yeah, but maybe the negotiations outcome or whatever, but yes, that's what,
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
that's what my proposal is for.
So how is that different than what we voted on
Nothing than-
yesterday?
Yeah. I mean, let's
Because
just
yesterday,
wait
we
until
just
get
said that they
something.
could have the discussion. There was no motion to do anything except to have the discussion, but now my request is a little bit more toward the step of having them work on this and spend and invest the time and utilize that $117,000 of operational costs against the budget reduction. And then just have them use this as part of our reduction plan. And then again, depending on what the bids and the negotiations end up being and how we vote on that land deal will make a difference whether we finish moving forward or stop the process. Is that how you understand what I'm saying, Dr. Van Zyl?
Yeah, well, I think we're probably being a little wordier, and it's
Yeah.
probably being a little muddy.
Yeah.
I think you're both saying the same thing, is that on the 11th, bring us the sale price, bring us
Yep.
the bids, and we'll approve
Yep.
if the dollar amounts and everything line up.
Yep.
Is basically, I think
So that-
you're
So
saying the same
That
thing.
time, we can then decide for sure which direction we're
Right.
going.
Director Thompson?
Have we received any feedback from community members on this? Did you guys do a survey? Like, you can show me that parents are,
No, we haven't done a survey similar to most anything else that you've discussed. We haven't done a survey for any of those items.
okay.
Director Carly Anderson?
I just think that at least this time creates more opportunity for feedback, should there be it, for us to consider. You know, the one thing I do want to be cognizant of is that it's just like most things where you're not going to hear the positive feedback for the most part. So, you know, I do think we have to be mindful of, but it would be nice to see how much traffic we're getting on this. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I think the thing that I struggle with the most on this one is the population of students and making sure that we're doing right by this student population. Obviously, the building that they're currently in doesn't meet their needs. And I look at this from two perspectives. One being it's a better space at the middle school, thinking that maybe it's temporary, which also brings like a positive and negative. I don't like to move a student population twice within such a short amount of time. But then there's also that kind of negative aspect where I don't really want it to be a permanent solution for the ALC campus either. I really feel like the plan that we had in place as a district would be a new ALC campus, that we could expand opportunities. And I know Dr. Van Zyl has spoken to that too. So I just want to make sure if this is what we're doing, if this is the decision that we're making, that we're cognizant of the fact that we keep in mind that that was our plan, was to make sure that we provide a location for the ALC that meets their needs, a facility that would be a career and technical center, and that they're not forgotten about at Kenwood Trail.
Chair, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the timing on this, like we discussed last night, that population that's there today wouldn't be there with the next transition, if we could have the building I'm envisioning for them, they'll be happy if they have to transition to it, whether they
Right.
already moved once.
Right.
I hope. But I agree with you. I mean, I think that there's a really awesome ability that we can do to not just benefit the ALC students with that vision of what that building could be, but a lot of our students. So I think it's really an awesome opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah, and that's my vision is
Yep.
thinking like of that plan that we had in place for the ALC, thinking of that 2030 vision, and then making sure, you know, that would provide opportunities to all of our high school students to have a career and technical center along with their ALC. So
Yep.
I guess that's what I want to make sure that we're keeping in our perspective there for this student population.
Yep.
Dr. Van Zyl.
I would tell you that I agree with you. And I would also say that in what I understand the motion is this does not finalize the plan. It just says, take another step and bring us this data, and we'll decide with clarity on the 11th, is how I understand basically what the motion is saying. You're not saying, hey, we're completely approving this. We're saying, get us
Correct.
the price of the building, get us the price of the construction.
So we can decide.
And then you also have the time that several of you set up to visit with the principal or visit the site. And then on the 11th, you'll be able to have that finalized, because I think to Carly's point, it doesn't directly impact staff, but it indirectly impacts staff And so if you get those items, hopefully then on the 11th, it takes away any other concerns that you have.
Director Thompson?
How is this different from the motion that we had yesterday when you said, go have negotiations and let us
A
know
little
what you
more
find?
specific.
It's more specific, and because we're actually, before what what the motion was is just I had to prove to you that there was interest from the city in writing, is basically how I took the motion yesterday. This is basically saying now, go say, hey, here's what we want for it. Are you still willing to sell it? Bring us the price. And so it's not a huge step difference, but it's enough difference that I think it creates more clarity and gives more feedback to people that, hey, we're moving toward that. And so you'll have the time and some more specific information is how I take it.
But then please also survey the Kenwood parents, if we do that.
Is that a possibility?
I would say again, I think that question's been asked of me before, and I think you have to be very careful of that because you didn't survey folks in other areas. And so
That's true.
I think that creates an issue. I think that's just my 2 cents.
I was
Because
just-
because
I was just
it
asking.
creates some divisiveness to saying, well, you asked this group, but you didn't ask us. You didn't ask us if we wanted to not have busing for elementary kids anymore. You didn't ask us if you wanted us to not have the. So I understand the point, but I also think that it creates more negative for you on that side because I think people have the ability to share with you their thoughts and ideas from now until April 11th on how they feel about it.
That's fine.
Director Kelleher?
It's just how I take it, because I don't want you to get beaten up by saying, well, you didn't ask us about this, but I think it gives you more time for people to provide you the feedback that maybe you're looking for.
All right. Director Thompson?
Can I request a motion to be restated or?
Sure.
I
Director
made a
Kelleher, do you want to
motion
restate your
accept the
notion?
relocation of the ALC proposal pending pending negotiations is what I said, but
Right.
we can get more wordy than that, but pending negotiations,
The sale negotiations and I would add
the
Bid
sale.
proposals?
The bids,
construction.
the construction costs. There we go. Pending negotiations and construction costs. That's what it was.
Okay. All right. Is there any more discussion on this topic? Are we ready to go for a vote?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
No. So we're 4-3, so the motion passes.
You better tell
Kim
them which
will
One,
need
two,
to
three,
know
four.
what it was. Would you raise your hand if you voted, and then you could read it out? Who voted no?
Director Thompson, Director David Anderson, and Chair Baker.
All right, you got one last item on this. If you want to discuss it.
So the last item is the 260-day leaf adjustments. And I think the proposal on there is just a reduction of time, or is it?
You have the two options. Remember, you had the amount that took it down to 245 days or 245 days or 250 days.
Yeah,
Or
the amount on here is for 250 days.
Okay.
Change from 260.
This was, because I think what the board agreed to was a reduction of 10 days and no impact to benefits.
Correct.
Well, the board didn't agree to it.
Okay.
It is what was presented it was initially presented 15 days, and then there was questions about benefits, but then we clarified we didn't figure benefits into the
Right,
savings.
right.
But then we also said contractually you could go to the 10-day reduction.
Oh, that's-
And it didn't impact the benefits. So what is reflected there, the number I think Bill said is the 10-day reduction doesn't impact benefits.
But didn't we vote on that, though? I thought
You voted on it last night, but it was that's why it's under the motion failed item.
Yeah, we
It
just.
failed.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we asked.
Did
for
a
it.
review, that's what we did.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I missed
And you
that.
asked, I think there was a conversation in regard to the 260-day employees at central office or
Yes.
district office
Yep.
in regard to that. So
Sorry.
I think there was a number that, there was 11 people, is that how
Yes.
many?
That is correct.
an additional 11 people. And there's some question in regard to this. I get it. Normally, this is just my take on this. Normally, there is a difference between district office and school buildings, and that's why that line was picked. It wasn't to say that one's more important or one's less important, but that's where that particular area was. I think Leaf would also tell you that, not that there's not a sense of urgency, but they normally don't find out what their staffing is until much later in the year anyway. So if this was one of those areas that you said, hey, we'd rather wait and see what goes on, and I'm just looking at head shakes, it's normally probably May or June before they find out staffing anyway. So not that they wouldn't like to know, but I think the sense of seeing if something else happens, since you voted to say no, could be one of those options where you say, hey, this is one we wait till the 11th, talk about it some more, see where things are at, or could even wait a little bit longer. I'm not asking for them but I think that you have some of that flexibility a little bit different than some other contracts that you have. If I look at Brenda and Heather a little bit, I think that there's that ability within the contract. Is that accurate?
Director Lind?
I think I was the one that wanted you to explore that last night, and I talked with you a little bit today, and I'm okay with their recommendation, which was to leave it as it was at the district office. So I don't have any issues with this. And I'm not sure when I voted yes or no last night at that time. I don't remember.
You voted no, but
I voted no? Okay. Maybe that's why. I don't know.
I think it was because we asked for more information, yeah.
Okay.
Director Thompson?
Yeah, I understood that you're seeking more information of, what would it look like at the district
Yeah.
office and non-district office. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's lost productivity, whether it be 15 minutes, whether it be 10 days. You're looking at $48,000 in savings, and I think this has been voted twice and has been voted no twice. So
Correct.
Let's just leave this off the table and call it a day.
Leave it on the table.
Do we have a motion to table it?
You don't even have to have a motion.
You don't have to have a motion.
Remember, we were just bringing things up for discussion. If you wanted to vote on it, you could. If you don't want to, you just say, hey, let it ride for a little while longer and bring it back to us if you need to. So you don't even have to have a motion to do anything. We already know where it sits, and we'll just keep it on our list of things to see how it plays out over time.
Director Thompson?
Do we need to make any updates to our compensation? Do we need to do that? Can we do that today?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Oh, the board salary piece.
Board salary.
Was
we need
that
to
in the
bring that up or
consent
no?
agenda
It's-
or not?
Oh, yeah, did we
Not
forget?
on the
I don't think I
agenda.
put it on there, but yes, I think that you have the ability, since we're talking about the
Let's do
budget
that now.
component. I'm sorry, because that was something that we should have put on the agenda, but since you already talked about it, I think you can,
It's not on the agenda.
Oh, but we've talked about public. comment.
yeah, you talked about a lot of things. But for clarity for that, what I think Brian is talking about, remember you made the motion
Right.
to give up your salary as board members, but the tax issue for us and the tax issue for you would still be there. So what you really have to do is vote to change your salary to $1 instead of just completely saying no. Then the taxing item for us and the taxing item for you is basically null. If that makes sense?
Am I able to get that dollar from you, Dr. Van Zyl, tonight?
I actually bought this Coke prior to the meeting, so unless you take Venmo or debit card, I don't have the ability, and that's a millennial
And
thing.
Director
That's a
Thompson agreed
millennial
to pay
thing.
all my taxes, too.
Do you have another item after this, though?
Yep, we do.
Director Thompson?
I'll make a motion that the Board of Education compensation is $1 for school year 23-24.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so we have
Everybody seconds.
a motion on the table by Director Thompson to have the board salary be $1 for the fiscal year 23-24.
The only thing I think you have to clarify is normally you vote every January on what your salary is, so really and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't it have to be from July 1st until December 31st?
That's fine.
Because then
23,
if there are some changes in the board, that's when you normally bring it back up.
That's fine.
Thank you
That
for
makes
that
sense?
clarification.
Yep, that makes sense.
All right, so the motion was by Director Thompson, the second was by Director Lind. There any other discussion on this item?
This does fulfills the legal requirement as well.
That's what we were told. Because we just have to pay you something. You set what that salary amount is.
Okay, and so what's the timeline on it again?
It'd be July 1st to December 31st.
Oh, got it.
So it's
Yeah.
not a full,
Yeah.
it's not a full year.
Correct, got it.
We review it.
Yep.
Review it in January.
Yep,
Okay.
got it.
All right. Any further discussion? Director Thompson?
And just for general transparency, if the community may or may not know, it's $6,000 roughly a person, so we're looking at $57.50. Oh, $67.50. So so people know the compensation of board members, but also it's not a lot it's not a big chunk, so I just want to share that. So we're looking at 45,000-ish.
And we should add, we give a whopping $200 more for the chair.
Yeah, yeah.
That's if you did the whole 12 months, so it'll be a little bit different than that because I can't count July,
we're
August,
pro-
September,
it's
October,
prorated.
November, December, so 6 months times that. So it would be roughly half of what a normal year would be. Does that make sense?
Okay.
We can get you the exact dollar amount if we'll get that for your budgeting purposes, but what you're really just saying is pay us $1.
Pay us a buck.
Okay.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay. We'll put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, so that finishes our recommended actions. We'll go on to additions to the agenda. We had one item that was added to the agenda by Director Thompson, the Board of Education Finance Committee. So Director Thompson, do you want to speak to that?
Yes. So I think we've had lots of great conversations and helping and being creative to close the $7 million gap. We've got less than about 1,000 to still close. And so,
million.
I'm sorry, $1 million. $1 million to close. And my hope is that as we've gone through this exercise, we've done our best to talk through and ask a lot of questions, which is the role of the board around the budget proposal and minimize the amount of impact that it may have on students and on the academic objective. And so I proposed that we establish a finance committee that would have 3 board members, that would have the HR and finance from the district, 2 external stakeholders to help work with internal and external stakeholders within our community to find creatively the additional $1 million gap. And so it would be board-led, but that is my recommendation, and they would have until now and I don't know, May 15th is the date that I propose, but as they have ideas that have come up, they can bring them to the board as the ideas materialize for us to vote on as we close that 1 million gap.
Dr. Van Zyl?
I agree that can be a component of the finance committee, but the finance committee for the board is normally much broader than that. It's not just about the reductions, it's about the budget as a whole, it's about the audit. So there's multiple roles that plays. So I think the establishment of the committee is a great idea, but I don't want you to just, in your motion, narrow it down that much. I think you want to establish the committee with the 3 board members, your finance person, and then whoever else needs to come in, whether it's HR, myself, technology, because I think normally it's the board and then the finance director, and then you bring in the resources from the district as you need, along with at least 2 or 3 outside community members that are a part of that. So I don't want your motion to limit what your function of the committee is. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Because I think you want it broader than that based off of
That's a
our
good
earlier
recommendation.
conversation. So I think
Okay.
that can be a role in it, but I think it's a much broader role what you're looking for, the oversight of the overall operating budget and the process that it goes through.
Yeah.
So
but the first task
can I
would
make
be-
a comment, though? Because what I heard last night was being asked and is different than what you're talking about. What I heard last night being asked and what was shared, and that it was being led by the board, is a board subcommittee, and talking about the three board members making up that as a board subcommittee, which falls under the board committee. What's being discussed right now is, what I'm hearing is an advisory committee. Is that what? So do you want a board subcommittee or do you want an advisory committee?
I would like a board subcommittee with their first task in helping close the $1 million deficit.
So then with a board subcommittee, that's usually like the administration and board members, and it doesn't usually bring in the outside sources and community members. Now, it doesn't keep us from having to go out to them to share and get some feedback, because we did have advisory committee at one point. So what you described last night to me was a board committee. So I questioned it when Terry questioned it. You were asking for a board committee, but so.
Can you restate the
Okay,
difference, just for
so-
clarity for public, what the difference is between the committee and the subcommittee?
So a board committee would be a subcommittee of board members and the administration. So we had them in the past. If we needed personnel or something discussions, there would be three of us would get together and talk to the HR person. The advisory are our advisory councils. That's like our curriculum, teaching and learning, our special ed advisory. Those are community members, staff members, and a board representative that gets together and talks about things that the district is needing. They usually report to, like if it's a finance advisory committee, they report to Bill and help advise Bill on what to share with the board.
Okay.
So I'm thinking what he's wanting, what Brian is wanting, is a board committee, but I think there's discussions down the road or in the near future to add to our advisory committees, because we used to have a advisory council with finance, and they were really great to help kick feedback back and forth on layman's terms, going out to the community with referendums and just getting to people to understand the complexity of budgets. So can you please clarify what you're asking?
Yeah, I would like a board committee, and then I think for the ability to add advisory, I think like you recommended, we can do that later. Yep.
Okay.
But again, the task of, well, let's get a board committee set up first.
I think you just make the motion for the board committee, and then
Yeah.
what you do as a board. Then what you do as a board committee is you establish your purpose and guidelines of what you want to do. So I think that's a component of what you normally get together to say, what's the purpose of this committee? I think you establish it first,
Yep.
and then you sit down and say, so what are our priorities and what are our purposes, so that you know what you're going to be reporting back to the board. So, and again, I don't want you to narrow the spectrum of what you're doing. So I think just establishing the committee with the guidelines of, hey, we want 3 board members and the finance person is probably the what you want, if I'm reading you correctly.
I do, but I want to be able to accelerate if we can, because I think this board needs to be able to engage in the community over the next couple of weeks, where it makes sense to figure out. I mean, if we've got $1 million still to solve, I don't know what the steps are to make sure that how do we get this up and running versus having to wait.
Are you talking about the board committee or the advisory?
The board committee.
Committee.
Oh,
The board,
Director Lind, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm getting confused here. The committee, the board committee, I mean the advisory, I think we definitely need to talk about that as a group and decide what we wanted to do and the goals. I think for both of them. I just don't think we should say, let's go with what Brian says. I think we need to have everybody's input. And that, if that means a work session, and I don't think it'd take very long, Brian. I don't think it would take us long to come to any agreement on that, but I think we need to have input.
well, I think the advisory council piece, and just for clarity, so that we don't get confused, board committees is what we call the subcommittee of the board, and councils are what our advisory councils are, so we don't get them confused. And advisory councils are community facing and stuff. But I think that the council piece, I don't think Brian is asking for urgency there. I think he's asking for urgency with the board subcommittee.
Well, fine, but I think both of them need to have our input into how what's it doing in its goals.
Correct, and I
And
think that's what he's asking.
So I'm saying we need to talk about that before it goes forward. We need to agree on what we want it to do. Does that make sense?
Director Carly Anderson?
Yeah, I really appreciate the idea of establishing the committee. My concern is I think we've got things hanging out there that I would not want to delay just in terms of kind of what you're talking about, what the goals are with kind of pushing this to start. So I think part of it is figuring out what we want and developing a plan and a vision for that going forward. But what I wouldn't want is we have some big decisions still on the board in front of us here that I wouldn't want to delay just with respect to kind of some of the other things we've talked about tonight with teachers and that kind of thing. So some of the decisions I think we need to make faster than probably what could be done by establishing I think that's going to take some time, or should take some time.
Director Kelleher?
So Chair, so I believe there's a policy, it's a subcommittee policy, or a committee policy, board committee policy, and it dictates that we can do ad hoc. We could just do an ad hoc subcommittee and not work on establishing a budget committee, just do an ad hoc committee with the charge and the focus of what needs to be done here. And so maybe we can all think about that and come back and include that as a discussion item on the 11th, what everybody would like that to consist of, and we could get that ad hoc committee pulled together and decided on. Does that work for you?
It doesn't, because I think that's about 2.5 weeks of delay.
You just want that ad hoc
Yeah,
decided
you know what?
tonight then?
I'm okay with an ad hoc committee
Yep.
as a group that if we can come to consensus, and then that committee can come back with recommendations in addition to recommending even establishing an official finance committee, but I'd be okay with that.
So you're asking, I'm sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
Kind of tired of going.
Yeah.
So you're asking to do the ad hoc, but you wanted to figure it out tonight, what that direction is going to look like.
Yes, I think an ad hoc budget committee, let's go with that. There'll be to work with the community, work with the various stakeholders that we have to close the $1 million gap. That's what I would like to do.
I think an ad hoc of the board would just be board members and
Yeah, but his saying to work with, I think, you're going to get input from people when you're out in the
Okay.
community.
Yeah.
To me, he's not like calling 20 people in and sitting down and talking about it. He's just making sure whoever those three are engaged and learning and talking and reaching out.
Yes.
Okay. So,
I guess I would just,
Ad hoc committee.
I think you just, if you want to put an ad hoc committee together, you can. I guess I wouldn't say about $1 million gap, because you've got items that you still are going to be working on, I think to Carly's point on the 11th, that if you do them, you're not at $1 million gap anymore. So I think you can talk about ad hoc committee to talk about other alternatives and suggestions that are out there and try to generate those things rather than having a specific target, because you may close that $1 million on the 11th.
Well, my hope is that the ad hoc committee would also be reviewing those things as well. Outside of other components. So I think there are. No, not on the 11th.
No.
Just in making, taking a look at the budget, taking a look at other opportunities, and coming back to the board with other recommendations. So I would like to propose 3 folks to be on that, on the ad hoc budget committee instead of 2.
Director Lind?
I'm getting very nervous about this. I would like to have a work session so we discuss it, so we know it's actually what we agree to, what that committee should be. I'm just not willing to just say, I'll go ahead and do it. I'm not willing to do that. I'm willing to talk about it and determine that everybody's voice is involved and we agree on what that will be.
I guess, from what I was thinking, they can't, I mean, everything that they talk about would have to be brought back to the board. There's no decisions
Yeah,
that can
they
be
don't have
made.
any-
So
No, that isn't it. Will it function? In other words, what are the things that this group wants to do? What do we want them to do? What is their goal? Am I missing
Kelleher.
something?
Yeah, I think,
Okay, what
I
am I
think
missing?
so. I think it's pretty, he wants 3 board members to gather together
Mm-hmm.
and take a look at what else we could possibly propose and help learn and understand to narrow the budget gap that we have, so that by June 30th, when we by law have to vote on the budget, we have a balanced budget. So it's an ad hoc, short-term solution.
So it's not
for
what you
this.
originally came up with, having 2 stakeholders or whatever.
Well, I thought about having them on it, but it sounds like that's considered an advisory committee versus
Well,
versus
it
not.
moves into that, yeah.
Yep.
right.
Oh, so we're talking just about 3 board
Right,
members.
Dr. Van Zyl had a
Oh, well, okay.
Better
okay,
idea.
I'm good.
Okay.
You've lost me, so
I don't know.
it's 10, almost 10:30 again
So-
tonight. You
Join the
lost
rest
me.
of us.
So,
with the-
And I probably didn't
I understand the
communicate it very
intent,
well
I
because
think,
I,
so.
make motions to make
Okay.
committee votes.
I got it.
So, do we need to make a motion first for the ad hoc committee?
Do we?
Or how do we determine which
I
members would
think
be
we
on
can
that?
just establish, there's no voting or anything that's
Okay.
necessary. It can
You
just
have
be
the ability to
established.
establish an ad hoc committee at any
Okay.
time that you want without a motion of the board.
Okay.
So we're ad hoc.
So we're ad hoc finance committee, and we need 3 board members to participate in that. I would like to be a part of that. I don't know if anyone else on the board would like to be.
Well, see, now we have the whole board, so now we're back to doing, now we got the whole board. Oh, maybe you don't want to.
No, I would be totally interested
No.
in being a part of it.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot of learning that that needs to take place. I would be willing to
Yeah.
do that. I would like to understand it more too.
Yep.
So, I don't
If you have
know.
that much interest, you need to decide, I think.
I said I would be interested.
No, there was other interest.
Yeah,
Oh, other
I-
interest, okay.
yeah, other interest.
Is there other interest from board
I-
members to be included in that?
I'm interested in it from the longevity, or, just from knowing what's been here in the, well, I suppose your history too. But,
But you're interested?
yeah.
Okay,
Anyone else?
I'm good with
I
it.
think Bree said she was interested. Terry's interested.
No,
Nope, you're gonna, okay, Terry's bowing out.
I'll be in the reserve, okay?
Reserve, okay.
I'll take my role as treasurer seriously and participate in this adventure.
Okay,
But we can't have 4 then.
we can't have
We have
4.
three.
4.
We can only have 3.
Oh,
You want to join me in the
I,
reserve?
I like, oh, go ahead.
What?
You can draw straws. Rock, paper, scissors.
well, the only thing I would say is I'm going to be out for a week, so that's.
Me too. I have for spring, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for spring.
Right, I'm willing to bow out if you guys want to do it.
Who's all interested?
You're talking,
Who's all
who are we
interested?
talking?
Carly, Kim,
I think
Terry and
you,
myself.
Bree, Kim, and Carly were the 4 that I heard.
Well, I would be willing to go to the reserve, I said that.
Terry's going
But
to
we
the
still have
reserve.
4, because it would
He's on
be
the bench.
You
Judy,
only need
Bree,
3.
Yeah.
me, and Carly.
So one of
One would
you.
bow out, and I said,
So
I'm
why-
fine bowing out.
So,
Okay,
huh?
I'm fine bowing out and letting you 3 do it.
yeah.
So Judy, Bree, and Carly.
Okay.
Does that work?
Judy, Bree, Carly.
Okay,
All
We're
right.
good.
All right,
thank you.
sounds like that's good. So now the last item we have on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
I'll make this very short. Spring break is almost here. Hopefully the snow melts and everybody be safe and don't get sunburned. So that's all. We've been at this long enough. You don't need any
Wait, we do have-
more of a report from me. And we do have a closed session following this, so you'll take a couple-minute break and then we do have to go into a closed session.
The Minnesota Open Meeting Law, Minnesota Statute, Section 13D.05, Subdivision 3B, allows the school board to close a meeting to engage in attorney-client privilege discussions. The district has been threatened with litigation. The board seeks to meet with its attorney to discuss the status of this matter. It would be detrimental to the district's interests for the board to hold a public discussion with its attorney where any adverse party or their attorney could listen to or be made aware of the attorney's advice related to the threatened litigation. It is in the district's best best interest for the board to obtain legal advice in a confidential setting to maintain the attorney-client privilege. Accordingly, I will hereby entertain a motion that this meeting be closed pursuant to the attorney-client privilege for the reasons cited.
Close this one first.
So,
So moved.
yep, so moved.
So we have a motion by Director Kelleher. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Director Carly Anderson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Are we going into a smaller
As
room?
you say, Nora, we could probably go into the spruce.
Yep.
Do we have a recording?
All right, so the board is back in session after a closed session. Do we have a motion to approve the agreement that was discussed in closed session?
So moved?
All right, so we have a motion by Director Lind. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Director Carly Anderson. Any further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Having completed all the items tonight, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
We have a motion by Director Carly Anderson. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Director Schindley. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is officially adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you and good night.
I got criticized earlier.
Thank you, Melissa.